So you're telling me that successful podcasts are made in heaven?
Okay, I watched this movie this morning.
Yeah.
I already don't really remember what you're
basically
talking about.
the last line of the film. It is the thing that
Right,
is my
okay.
virtual background on the Zoom right now. When Cameron Diaz and Ewan McGregor are litigating whether it makes life more or less romantic that love is a bureaucratic act commanded by Dan Hedaya in a white office. The whole you're telling me that successful relationships are made in heaven, not founded on the daily practicality of two people being prepared to tolerate the imperfections of one another. And he responds, it's not successful relationships, Celine. It's love. And it comes from a strange and wonderful place that we don't know about. And that place is an office.
Can I confess?
Yes.
I was feeling a little exhausted at that point in the movie.
By
just
this
a little
movie?
bit worn out. A little bit.
By this film?
This is also the top quote on IMDb. I'm just going to call you out right now.
Oh, absolutely. I opened up you know what? I didn't even open up the quotes page. I scrolled down to IMDb where it always gives you the preview of the first quote. And I went, why dig deeper?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, do that.
David, this is arguably one of the first examples of the modern wave of slow cinema, right? I would say this is kind of...
Yeah, right. This is like watching a train go through Norway for 12 hours, definitely.
Yeah. I was surprised that James Benning didn't direct this. Yes.
I have to say, I think it was too slow.
Too slow.
And that's coming from me.
Yeah. I also just wish he would have made some choices. There's nothing about this. You don't feel Danny Boyle's fingerprints anywhere. It's like he's asleep at the wheel. The thing's on autopilot. Throw a little style into this thing.
Yeah, it's real 4-quadrant stuff, just trying to be everything to everyone,
lacking
very
in
generic.
personality. That's the number one thing I'd say it's lacking in, is any sort of distinct esoteric personality.
I mean, even the soundtrack is just so typical.
Was there a soundtrack? I don't even remember hearing a single song in this movie.
I guess you're right. Yeah, it's like in one ear out the other.
A sparse
Sarcasm is the
soundscape.
lowest form of humor. That's what they always say. Just gonna point that out.
Oh, is it really, David?
It's the kind of thing someone would say
really,
in a 90s movie.
Do people say that? Really interesting. Could I be podcasting anymore right now? What, David?
No, I don't know. Introduce our podcast, please.
I'm waiting for a guest. Our guest obviously has permission to interject at any point.
Oh, that's
I didn't
right.
know that.
I
don't know. I don't know why I thought I had to
House
be
rules.
introduced.
Because
really
people always think
like
they have to be quiet, but you
Too
don't.
polite.
You don't have to be quiet.
Yeah.
You can just burst in.
Well, there's just so many podcasts where there's 10 to 15 minutes of just catching up and then the sort of stumbling into remembering there was a guest. So I was ready for that. I'm actually appalled that you haven't gone on and on more.
No. We do the opposite, which is 30 to 45 minutes of stumbling into remembering that this is a podcast, but we do that with the guest.
I'm
we
so
remember
glad to be
the
along
guest
for this ride, just like the ride
we forget what we're doing.
Yeah,
what the point of the show is. But I'll tell you what the show is. It's Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David. I want to reveal.
Yeah,
I want to reveal that recently a friend of mine watched Rachel Getting Married and then texted me that she was listening to our episode about it and said, well, yeah, you haven't really talked about the movie much yet. And I was like, oh, well, how far in are you? And she's like, an hour and 25 minutes. And I was like, well, maybe we're about to start talking about the movie. I don't really remember that one, but so I felt a little embarrassed.
Yeah, no, that's horrifying. I do feel like we talked about that movie. Maybe that episode was 8 hours long. Listen.
I think the episode might be pretty long.
I think so, too. This is
it's
an
Iowan
podcast,
Live, right? I mean, it's sorry, this is a podcast. Yeah,
it's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who experience massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want, and sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. This is a mini-series on the films of Danny Boyle. It is called TRAINSPOTTING.
That's right. It sure is.
Today we're talking his first bounce.
Without question. Yes.
a pretty classic bounce. I think this was a real sort of 90s blueprint bounce of you are like an indie breakout director or a foreign director who gets the siren call from Hollywood and they go, just do your thing, but with bigger stars and more money. And then everyone goes, never mind, we hate your thing. And the question sort of becomes, was that person a one-trick pony? Did they get swallowed up by the studio system? Do they need to get back to the core of what they were doing, or are they done?
Look, this guy has one of the most classic early arcs, like for us, right?
Yes.
The only thing I'll say is it's weird that he bounced into a bigger bounce, right?
Yes.
But then also you could say The Beach, actually, which is his next movie, was actually less of a bounce because it actually did make money. Like it was not well regarded, but it did okay money wise. So maybe it wasn't as,
you're forgetting one thing though. Yes, you are right that technically that movie was profitable. It was also the first Leonardo DiCaprio movie to be released after Titanic.
I'm aware of the
highest
that were surrounding The Beach
of all time.
Well, no, The Man in the Iron Mask was, right?
Man in the Iron Mask comes out 6 weeks after Titanic.
Yeah. Well,
it comes out,
but yeah.
It's beaten at the box office by Titanic. It is successful,
Griffin,
but it's also like
what? This is box office 101. We all know this. If I ever taught a box office
next
class,
week. We'll talk about it next
exactly.
week. The point is,
I'm just saying the only way this movie, of course, isn't really a bounce is that it actually didn't cost that much money. It just cost more money for him, right? So,
but it like made it back. It made it back plus like $1 or something, right?
Yeah, you know what? And they probably. They shorted Hawaiian, shirt futures, and they probably made some money on that or whatever. Hollywood's always up to no good. But
I would be surprised if you found out this movie was 50% funded by Tommy Bahamas or
exactly 100%.
Or just the state of Utah, just sponsored by the state of Utah Tourism Bureau. Look at all the places there are in Utah. Yeah.
Exactly. Have fun with this, guys. It's doors open. But you are correct, especially in that sort of thing of like, buddy, we love your thing. Come do your thing.
Just do your thing.
Come on. Canvas is blank.
Yes.
Oh, you want to do some weird? Oh, yeah, sure.
All
Angels in an office. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
and it's like the same. It's like the same power trio. It's not even like, buddy, you do your thing, but you know what? Bring in some new blood. We don't care. It's like, oh no, you're gonna bring the same powerhouse that gave us these other two movies. You guys know what you're doing. You're a well-oiled machine.
They were the Three Musketeers. It was a proven, sort of machine. I also just watched it this morning for the first time. David, Ben, and I all only watched it this morning for the first time. I, in my sort of like mind, had thought this must have been some movie where the Siren Call of Hollywood comes for Danny Boyle, and they go, here's the script we have. You can do whatever you want with it. I did not think, for whatever reason.
Here's the classic 90s thing. Here's an indie comic book we found. Or here's some random property.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
It was squirrely Scottish Dr. John Hodge just cooked this up all on his own.
I was just like, this was their failed studio movie where they were asked to take over something that had been in development for a while. Not, this was their fully generated thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely thought there's no, my memory of it, I had invented a memory when I started watching it. I did see it. I have seen it before. And by the way, I just want everyone to know that I was asked to do this movie after I listed all of the other Danny Boyle movies that I wanted to do.
Pill. I'm just going to pause you for 1 second to say, of course, our guest today is Janet Varney from Legend of Korra and JV Club, the great Janet Varney.
Hi, everybody.
Who you told me how much you love Danny Boyle.
And then you punished me.
Yeah, I did.
If you love him so much, why don't you do A Life Less Ordinary? Why don't you do that then? If you love him so much, why don't you marry this movie?
Yep. Yeah. I said pretty please, but I did say
you did.
I triple
and
doggy
I had
dare
not
you.
seen it in long enough that I definitely thought, like, you know what? Maybe my voice in my head got very, my head, my voice was that shrill. Maybe I love this movie. I don't think I do, but maybe I do love it.
Maybe it's a secret masterpiece.
Yeah, and I started watching it. I was like, I really had that moment where it's like, oh, of course, yes, this was a novel, and there's a lot going on in the novel that makes sense. And then, of course, they had to cut down the movie for time, and it's all
they
there
had to compress.
And so I was like, let me just do a little research, and I was like, oh no, there's a novel and an indie comic that comes after the movie.
It was
after
adapted
the movie
into both.
But I think both of those things were in the works before the movie came out, right? Like, I feel like Like, David Bishop,
in,
right, was like, oh,
yes.
I got my hands on this thing that hasn't come out yet. Like, I'm going to make a serialized comic, just like,
Yes, no,
anyway,
but that was also them being like, oh, the Trainspotting, the soundtrack was so big, and everyone had the poster. Let's have shit ready to go. Yes. Urban Outfitters shelves are going to be stocked.
Everyone's holding their scissors ready to give the Ewan McGregor haircut. They're ready. Yes. They're poised.
Look, we've just done 2 hot young Ewan movies in a row where my takeaway was what great hair this guy has. Yeah. Both like perfect feather,
shallow grave, and Trainspotting. It's true.
And the buzz cut. And then this, I'm like, he looks so fucking annoying. I want to punch him in the face.
It's weird. And when you see it early on, I do feel like you see it from the back to a degree that you're like, I got to pause this and have a conversation with myself about whether this is a wig. Like, I need to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And I started out confident that it was. And then as the movie went on, I was like, I wonder if they shot the first part last and that was a wig, because the rest of the time it feels like it's his hair. And somehow that's worse.
Yeah.
Has his hair ever looked bad in another movie?
No, I think
it's kind of hard to mess that guy's hair up.
I can't think of one.
He's got good hair. Like, that's part of his 30-year career.
Right. Even like Fargo, where they try to make his hair look bad on purpose, it looks better than this.
Yeah, well, it's still like kind of dorky chic, if memory serves. But this is like, no, this is tough. And then I also had to have that conversation with myself. Like, was that what we were doing then? Like, Cameron Diaz's hair is very familiar to me. I had that sort of pixie cut that's like a little overstyled, and you tell yourself you've got all this like good stuff going on. It's reminiscent of, I think there might be a Cranberry song in this. No, it's the Cardigans. The Cardigans. Similar. But where like, there was that sort of short pixie, kind of edgy, like this was definitely my hair for a period of time. Although I don't think I ever curled it into that sort of weird bouffant that they give her early on. But yeah, so that felt familiar. But his hair was like, I really had to ask myself, like, was going on in like Edinburgh, or like where all the cool movie like music video directors had? Did they have that hair?
Feels
was that
like
Oasis?
A butchered version of Oasis. Yes, that was my thought the whole time.
Which maybe that's the idea of the character, right? Is that he's this sort of, they needed to make him a schmuck, but he still had to be like a cool Danny Boyle schmuck. So he'd have schmucky Oasis hair.
Yeah.
All right. I want to defend Oasis because their hair was never that bad. I sort of know what you mean, because I guess they had these kinds of, 90s mop tops. I guess Liam's hair did get
it's
that
mullety
long.
also.
Yeah. So I guess that's the closest. But really, it more feels like they're like, let's try this. Maybe this will be, everyone's going to want this in a year. And then, there were 0 people walking into the barbershop being like, can I have Ewan McGregor in A Life Less Ordinary? Like, that happened to create 0 times.
The Rachel for men. Like, you're right. I think it was an aspiration to create a haircut. Yes.
There's a lot of layers. It was like a mini Rachel.
Yeah, it's complicated.
The sort of dance dream karaoke sequence, he like slicks his hair back, and in this final direct address to the camera, that's my background right now. And you're like, well, I could watch this movie. Yeah. If he looked like this the entire time, this film would be 15% easier to watch immediately.
15%, generous. Okay, but all right.
Easier to watch. I'm not even saying better.
Yeah.
I'm saying easier
to watch.
Understood. The hair is so much of the annoyance for me.
What about the shirt that I read that I guess is actually Gucci, but yet it's on him, the character of... That was the other thing, is that I had very early on, I was like, I know it's a book because they're really shoehorning in this charming, adorable Scotsman as a janitor in a large American like skyscraper. Like, this was written for someone else. This wasn't written for a Scottish guy. Then you're like, John Hodge wrote it, huh? So I guess it probably was written for Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
It kind of was, and kind of what it honestly, and I got this in the dossier. He tried out an American accent, and they were just sort of like, why don't you just be Scottish and we're just not going to worry about it. That seems to be how it went, which I get.
Yeah. That's one of the better things about it. If he had an American accent, I mean, we've heard him do it. He can do okay. But the Scott, almost like, let me ask you this, Griff. What if he had the right hair that you like, but he was American? Would that negate that 15% for you?
I think I would. I think I would take that trade-off.
Okay.
No.
I would. And we've said
David is no go. He is a no go.
McGregor tends to oversell American accents.
Yeah, that's his American accents make my teeth hurt.
It would be annoying, especially in this era. At this point in his career, it would be an annoying accent. But I still think I'd take that trade off. The hair hurts my teeth.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the hair also hurts my teeth. I can't deny that. I'm pretty sure this is 1997 is the same year that Ewan McGregor was also in an iconic episode of ER where he plays a guy who holds up a convenience store that Nurse Hathaway is in, and it's like,
wow,
you're in the store the whole hour. Do you guys not know about this? God, iconic episode.
No,
where he also has this haircut.
Oh, don't say that.
He also has this haircut, and
that's
Janet. You should watch it. You'll love it. You'll love it.
Okay.
It's the best.
Okay.
And he also is like doing a Scottish accent. I'm pretty sure for no reason. So like. Maybe whatever. He just loved this hair for a year because it's.
Did you say he's doing a Scottish accent? If he's Scottish,
yeah, he's just talking.
Well, that's what I mean. He's right. Good point. He's just not. He's, but like it's in Chicago, but it's just sort of like, well, he's Scottish for some reason. Don't worry about it.
They get all just like the Australians and the Kiwis. They get all over. You're gonna run into Scots people everywhere.
As in this, there's no scene of him being like, and that's when I left Scotland for here, and that's why I did that, like he just.
And that's why we go back to Scotland. Yeah. At the end, I wear a kilt and we buy an old Scottish castle.
Which, go off.
Nice work if you can get it. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm pulling up photos from this ER episode, and the hairstyle is very similar, but somehow it doesn't upset me in the same way.
It doesn't. You're right. It's better styled, even though he only had whatever the 1 week of TV filming to get it right. Or I don't know.
It feels like the exact same cut, but whatever product they're putting in it in the Life Less Ordinary set is like Satan's cum. It is some unholy goo.
Satan's.
It also manages to make it puffy and dry, though. I guess that is what Satan's cum would be, puffy and dry. So
it's both like too flat and too fluffy.
It's sad that Ewan doesn't have an Oscar nomination.
It's kind of wild.
This could have been it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that.
This could have been the one. This could have been the one.
Moulin Rouge was the one I remember feeling
Moulin Rouge
rude
is the
at
closest.
the time.
Yeah, that's probably the closest he came.
That
and
she just sort of got all the attention on that, and it felt like everyone kind of took him for granted when he's really, really good in that.
Yeah,
he's good in it.
He has a great singing voice, just like Cameron Diaz. Just like Cameron Diaz.
It's the same.
Might be the cutest part of this movie. What is adorably charming to me is that there was a conversation where Cameron was like, "Can someone else sing for me, please?" And he was like, "No. You're going to do it, and it's going to be adorable. You're awful." Yeah. And that's one of the most relatable, charming things about you because, you're very beautiful and it's a very unlikable character. So let's be yourself.
It's also funny because they dub her in The Mask, and that's her introduction as a movie star.
She sings in The Mask. It's one of the most iconic instant movie star moments.
And
she's
Prince.
Dubbed there.
Yeah.
Does she sing in My Best Friend's Wedding and sing badly? There's a lot of singing in that movie.
I think she does, yeah.
That's the
now that you say
right?
that.
There's the wedding karaoke.
And isn't that is that 97? I think that's 97.
That's the same
year.
So
she's duo bad singing at events in movies.
And Janet, it is the exact thing that you just said, except it works in that movie. They talk about it where the whole bit is she signs her up for karaoke to embarrass her. Yes. She does the song. She's horrible.
That's it. That's the scene.
And then the bit is Dermot Mulroney is more charmed by the fact that she's...
that's right.
Right. It works in that movie.
I think it works in this movie.
Kind of. They don't make as much of a beat out of it.
It works for me because it's there's very little to hold on to with her, and whether it's incidental that she's a bad singer or not, like I grab for it. Do you know what I mean? I grab for it. I'm like, oh, look at that. How lovable. How non-psychotic.
This character's a little bit of a disaster. She does also, I want to acknowledge, sing in The Sweetest Thing where she does the penis song.
Of course, there's the penis song in The Sweetest Thing, but which is well done and
Janet's looking off to the middle distance, trying to recall.
I really am. I'm stroking the sweetest thing. Is that the one with
Selma Blair, Christina Applegate?
Oh yeah.
Oh, he gave it
where
away.
They do the thing. This was a very famous thing. Like, oh, look at my arms. Look at my arms. Yeah, that was another. You know what? Well, I'll say this. Not unlike TRAINSPOTTING, that was a movie that was just sketches stitched together.
Yep.
That sort of, you're like, well, you found a bunch of funny moments, kind of, and you slapped them together and put a loose plot around it. Obviously, it didn't have the benefit of having been written as a book by Welch, but there's a parallel to be drawn there.
There's.
But I don't remember the penis song. I don't know how I don't remember it, but
the penis song is definitely the moment to remember. So you should check out The Sweetest Thing again, from the director of Cruel Intentions. My final Cameron singing question. Sorry. Does she sing in Annie? Surely. Or does Miss Hannigan not sing in Annie? Is it one of those?
Miss Hannigan sings in Annie. Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. So what the hell does she? I have not seen the modern remake of Annie. I don't know. Does she sing? Okay, no one's seen it.
Good luck filling Carol Burnett's. Yeah, you can't. Don't even. They should have retired that role if they're going to make a movie. I understand that it's a successful musical and goes on everywhere, all over the world. However,
it would be funny to remake Annie and just not have Miss Hannigan. That'd be a pretty big hole in the movie.
Carol Burnett should have won an Oscar for that. Did she? No, she didn't win an Oscar for that. She should.
That movie was a bounce in its era, but it's an amazing movie, in my opinion.
Cameron Diaz is credited on the soundtrack. That having been said, I know that movie is very auto-tuned.
I remember that. I remember them posting
across
a number
the board
that's very auto-tuney. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone but Jamie Foxx sounds like T-Pain in that movie.
Cool.
We all know exactly we all know what that means, and we all heard it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And T-Pain actually plays FDR in that movie.
He does.
I don't know. I know FDR is not in it. I know it's set in modern times, but still. It'd be funny if he just showed up and he was like, "I'm Franklin Roosevelt. What do you want from me?"
This is a good segue, though. I have a quick question for you guys, because you say when Annie takes place. When is heaven in this movie? Like, what era?
Great question.
Is heaven, and what era do our angels, played by Alejandro Delroy Lindo, where are they from? Like, because I don't feel like where they come from. Like, do they return to Earth in the form that they best remember because they lived in the 40s, but heaven is like the 60s?
You're asking more questions than some people who worked on this movie asked Janet Varney. That's all I.
They were living. They were human at one point.
I
believe
human.
So. That's sort of
Delroy Lindo says
right?
that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So.
And you know how like heaven has that hierarchy, and it has like police precincts and thieves and sex workers that get a bad rap, and
Gabriel's got the corner
we all
office.
agree that's what heaven's like, for sure.
As we all know, the Archangel Gabriel, who in the Bible like carries a flaming sword and announces God's will to men, then made this lateral move over to guy who's in charge of people falling in love. Like that was his second act in the celestial world.
Right. Why
he was
is
like, I'm
Gabriel
sick
and
of
not
being
Cupid?
the damn boss who's yelling at everyone. Fuck off, Cupid.
It's so bizarre. I texted David like this movie is insane, and he went to the degree it's one of those things where for the first 5 minutes I thought I had put on the wrong movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the last thing you expect is for this movie to open in heaven.
No.
I throw this movie on, and I think I just was not paying. I assume Ewan and Cameron's credits appear over a black screen or something, or I missed them or whatever. Because the second I started watching, I just saw this footage of heaven, which is a white, 60s office building, police precinct, whatever. Everything is white. And the credits are rolling like Holly Hunter, Delroy Lindo, Ian Holm. And I'm like, is this just like another movie? Did like iTunes break? Like did it just start a different movie? Because that sounds like a cast from a movie. Like, that sounds
definitely sounds like a cast from a movie.
You know what I mean? It's like who's in that? Holly Hunter, Ian Holm, Delroy Lindo. I'm just like, yeah, okay. That sounds those could be the stars. That's fine. Like,
in the canon of movies in which heaven is represented in some way as bureaucratic while everyone is wearing white, have you talked about any of those yet? I can't remember. Like, so have you talked about
defending
like,
your life?
You know,
is an obvious,
or like stay is there's is heaven can wait? I can't remember which ones involve heaven, but everyone wears white. Defending your life. Everybody wears white, beautiful robes. There's buses and trams.
The Heaven Can Wait remake sort of turns it more into a nightclub, is my memory.
Hot, great. More Beetlejuice, great. Got it.
But it's Chaz Palminteri and Eugene Levy. It's a little similar to this vibe.
It is funny how it is always like, you know, what sort of 40-something, 50-something nervy character actor, because that's funny, right? Oh, Chaz Palminteri.
He's had it up to here. Got even more. Oh, it's so running this place. Oh, it's exhausting.
Heaven ain't easy.
Yeah, heaven ain't easy.
So, you know, Dan Hedaya is the Archangel Gabriel. Looking at files going like, divorce, you know, like I was into that. I was briefly intrigued.
Have I ever said this on mic? That I realized during the pandemic that Dan Hedaya lives like in my neighborhood, like a block away from me. And there's like a local place I go to, and I was eating outside and he like walked up to get takeout. I saw him walk out of his building, grab takeout, walk back to his building. And it was like early-ish lockdown, like summer 2020, and I immediately knew it was Dan Hedaya fully masked because of the eyebrows, and the full fur collar of hair sticking around his t-shirt.
Yeah.
It was just no question that's who it was.
It's funny that you recognize him so quickly because he disappears into roles. I don't know what you're saying, David. He is unrecognizable. How many times do you watch a movie and suddenly you realize halfway through, I've been watching Dan Hedaya.
Man of a thousand voices.
I didn't even realize it. What a chameleon. And yet somehow, Griff, you were able to see him in a mask. You're like, no, that's savant stuff right there. You should not have been able to recognize him because he's unrecognizable most of the time.
Who even knows what the real Dan Hedaya looks like off screen? He's always in such deep disguise.
This is 1 year after Clueless, right? Or 2 years after Clueless.
2.
But this is, wouldn't you say this is prime? In fact, you know what, Griffin? Hedaya is not just in this movie. He's in another movie that came out in 1997 that Danny Boyle was supposed to make and dropped
Alien
out
Resurrection.
to make this. Alien Resurrection. Did you know that, Janet?
I did not know that. That.
It makes
dropped out to make
so much sense that they wanted Danny Boyle to do Alien Resurrection.
It makes the most sense in the world that, when they were like, we're queuing up Alien 4, and they're like, who should we hire? The guy who made TRAINSPOTTING. There you go. Like, that's exactly, he's just, they always would hire, because it was Fincher. And then before that, James Cameron, they'd hire like the guy who's about to happen. Yeah. Who's like very visual and who whatever had just made something exciting. Like, I guess is the easiest way to put it.
I'd love to have heard the hipster soundtrack if Resurrection had been Danny Boyle. Like,
that is a good point.
What do you
massive
want
attack wall to
see?
wall.
Yeah, massive. You're lucky if sneaker pimps are like part of the rendering and tearing of flesh. Like,
yeah. I mean, Griff, obviously he was going to make Alien Resurrection, right? Like, he was going to direct that script. It's the same movie.
Yes.
So would I like to see his take on that movie? Like, kind of. But like, I mean, I do feel like he probably was right to sort of smell disaster there, right? It's just funny that he then jumped to this.
But I think it would have been a better movie.
Yes.
I got a soft spot for that movie. I got a soft spot for that movie. And I got a soft spot for The Beach in terms, as long as we're talking about movies that followed or right around the same era and the people we're talking about. Let me say this. I have a soft spot for the first 3/4 of The Beach and then zero tolerance for the rest of it. Like, as soon as he starts to go crazy, quote unquote, go crazy, I'm like, I'm good. Which is really just one part of the movie. And I'm not saying that movie is good, but it's so watchable to me. It's so
that movie's pretty good.
Watchable, That's a movie where I've never really understood why people call it like shit on it as much as they do The Beach.
David's a big
there's
defender.
lot to
I have
like.
yet to see it. I'm excited to watch
Oh,
it
I
for
think
this
you're gonna
podcast.
like it.
I think I probably
you're gonna,
will.
Actually, don't you think, David, that he's going to like it? I think you're going to like it.
I think you will like it. It's a flawed movie, but like it's interesting. And it's honestly the same for Alien Resurrection, which we watched during the pandemic on this podcast. And I said to Griffin before it started, and you'd seen it before, Griffin.
And I
like
hated
a long
it
time
when I
ago.
saw it. Huge Alien fan. I had only seen it once maybe, and I hated it.
I said to you, even though this movie is like an early CGI, gore fest, it has so many sets and enough puppets. I think you're gonna just like kind of like it, and that was exactly your reaction. Yes.
I like it. I like it, and I like that they were like, you know what? We're going to try to make this monster. Like, we're actually going to try to make you feel about this monster the way that Sigourney Weaver feels about it, and I felt it.
That was my big thing.
I was like, I love you. I love you.
I
you
love
little
the newborn
slimy
alien.
baby.
I like the newborn alien.
Yeah.
I like the newborn too. But anyway, yes, but Janet, that's a good segue or whatever. You love Danny Boyle. You apparently adore most of his movies. So what's your relationship to Boyle? Like when you first watching a Boyle?
Well, I definitely was like, TRAINSPOTTING was a very well timed for me, because I was like, I had, some friends who were super into kind of Brit pop, like Brit DJs and Brit pop, and the sort of like beginning of that kind of ravey stuff that started to happen in the late 90s and early 2000s. And
not friends who were into heroin, hopefully.
Not friends who were into there might have been a friend or two who was into heroin, but and so I think I found it at a time, and I don't think I saw. I mean, I didn't see it in the theater. I was too young, I could have seen it, but I feel like I wasn't that cool. But like, it definitely kind of crusted in with the wave of me, going to see like John Digweed and stuff, and living in San Francisco and being like, I totally get this. Like, I really get this. And so I thought it was very cool and great in the way that when you're younger, you think movies where you're like, oh, you can make movies like this kind of works. But through his career, I've always loved his sort of like, it's kind of Soderberghian, the like, I don't know, maybe I'll do this kind of movie now.
Yes.
Like, let's try this. Like, call. I don't know, might work, might not. I enjoy the sort of like casualness of that they're like, I buy into it. I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not a big deal if this doesn't succeed, because he was trying something or whatever. But I think throughout the movies, even as disparate as they can be from one another, I feel like he finds like heart and sensitivity amid chaos in a way that I really like. And I think this movie does not have very much of that at all, if any. And that bums me out. That bums me out.
The biggest problem with this movie is that the characters are annoying. And in doing our episodes on TRAINSPOTTING and Shallow Grave and reading all the things he said about both of those movies at the time, he talked about how little he cared about the idea of characters being likable.
Yeah.
And that he didn't feel the need to conform them to classic sort of like Hollywood mainstream film archetypes and arcs and all that
and
sort of shit. And he's right. In those two movies, he is so right.
He is.
They're characters who are pretty despicable, who do awful things on screen, and they are engaging.
Yeah.
You are compelled by them. You want to watch them endlessly. And this movie starts, and the second we get to McGregor and Diaz, because the Hedaya, Lindo, Hunter opening is so bizarre, and all three actors are like in the pocket enough. You're like, I don't know where this is going, but okay. And then the introductions to both McGregor and Diaz, you're like, they are off-putting. Something has been miscalibrated here.
Yeah.
I am already annoyed by these characters. I don't want to spend time with them.
Like, just so, like, how can you be so, how can you be like shooting an apple off of Stanley Tucci's head and then shooting Stanley Tucci, as we come to understand, and still feel like just sort of empty and like, and the same with Ewan is like, it just doesn't, there's nothing about it that there's nothing to hold on to, even though you're supposedly seeing all this stuff. And I also, a thing that came up for me too, watching the beginning, where you sort of just have this like, then this happens and this happens and this happens, then his girlfriend's leaving him for an aerobics instructor and all of that kind of stuff. I felt like there was this sort of like desire to have the whimsy of like Savage Steve Holland, like a little Better Off Dead kind of like, whoa, this is just crazy. What's going on? But once again, those characters in his films, you're like, I love you, buddy. You're such a wastoid, but I love you. Like,
you're
you
on their
still
side.
love somehow you love them, and you're really having to fight against like I got nothing. You're not giving me anything, you know. Even Ewan McGregor, who's supposed to be like a lovable loser, is like he makes the choice to pull a gun on people so fast that you're like, ugh, you know.
I do know. Yes, these guys are pretty bad. They're kind of bad people, like which is fine or can be fine. Griffin, what is the movie that this movie is aping? You know, obviously this movie is incredibly indebted to the Coen brothers, like, and Danny Boyle is first to admit that. But that's more kind of like aesthetically and the sort of, you know, criminals who don't have a plan thing. But like, what is the '90s disaffected Gen X-y 20-something? I guess it's just that mindset.
Is it looking further back? Is it looking at like After Hours or like Something Wild or some kind of like
Something Wild is a good one. What about True Romance? I guess that's like, you know, I mean, obviously those are more unsympathetic characters. They're more lovable, but that movie's even further dialed up. But something like that where it's like,
but it's,
you know, you're so along for the ride, you're not even going to worry about how crazy these guys are.
Right.
Right. Like, what's that?
This thing is so much goofier too. Like, he's doing sillier stuff consciously, and then you add in the like the supernatural, magical elements of the movie. It is kind of unique. I don't know. I mean, watching this, I kept on like. The thing that is hard to process is that this is his third movie. And Janet, as you're saying, like, a thing that's cool about Boyle's career arguably starting on the next movie is that he begins to become a bit of a like genre hermit crab, and he wants to try and make one of everything. And this is like the third and final time it feels like Danny Boyle is a genre.
Yeah.
The like Boyle, Hodge, McDonald thing is like, all of our movies are like this, right?
Yeah.
And this is the one where they hit the end of the road and they're like, okay, time to reinvent, time to like
Griffin, I hate to tell you that is not true, because The Beach is very much part 4 of the vibe.
Okay, then I'm wrong.
28 Days Later is the let's go back to basics,
True,
let's strip everything out of the car, like, you know, that kind of thing.
You definitely, I agree with you, David. I mean, there's that, but The Beach still has, like, because it's, you know, like having Robert Carlyle sort of be, he's like the mascot of like the old school, that trio in The Beach is sort of, he's like pulling that along for you in a lot of ways. But there's also like a lot of just very sort of slick music video like feel to that movie that isn't as choppy, you know.
The Beach is Boyle, Hodge, and McDonald, and the decision they make, fair or not, is to cut Ewan out and take Leo, because obviously Leo is where he is at that point, and that's the decision that makes like Boyle and Ewan hate each other for years or whatever. And it's like interesting to think about that movie with Ewan, but if that movie had Ewan, then it would really kind of feel like, man, do you guys not have anything new in the tank? You know, it would be kind of like, okay, Ewan McGregor is like going crazy on drugs again. Like, you know, how many times do I ever watch this?
We get Tilda Swinton. We get Tilda Swinton,
oh,
and
no,
if you get Tilda Swinton, then you're like,
love.
wait a minute, like there's something happening here that's very, like, she's the head of an island film. I'm excited to listen to your episode about that.
I'm excited to
let me just say that.
Do it. David.
Yeah, what's up?
This year.
Oh my God. How's it going?
Gosh darn fast.
Oh, January's almost over.
Oh boy.
Well, you know what's important.
I'm still writing January on all my checks.
You shouldn't be writing January on your checks.
Yeah, and also I guess it's not a problem because it's still January.
Look, the important thing is to plan early to make the most of your time. That's what I want to set up here.
This is kind of the opposite of what I do.
Look, 2023 is well underway, like you said.
Yeah.
We're deep in January.
Yeah.
The meat of January.
Oh. Nothing better than
that sound that I just made.
Yeah. The tastiest part of January, if you ask me, are those final 5 days.
The sort of the fat on the side that you render in the
tender.
pan.
It's so tender.
Don't wait any longer, Griffin. To level up your small business and set your year up for success, get ahead of the competition by using Stamps.com to mail and ship.
That's what you do. That's how you kick off February in style.
Look, Stamps.com lets you print your own postage and shipping labels right from your home or office. It's ready to go in minutes. so you can get back to running your business sooner. Get back to the meat.
Get back to the meat, that delicious January meat. Because sometimes I think it's good to freeze some January meat so you can hold on to it and savor it into March or April. I love to have a couple extra January days I can thaw out in the spring and summer.
I have some bad news for you.
What?
Postage rates just increased
again.
Oh,
no.
Luckily, Stamps.com has the best discounts in the industry. What? With rates you literally can't find anywhere else, like up to 84% off USPS and UPS. Plus, Stamps.com automatically tells you your cheapest and fastest shipping options.
Cheap and fast is a good combination. Better than expensive and slow.
Exactly. And look, for 25 years, Stamps.com's been indispensable for over 1 million businesses. You got access to USPS and UPS shipping services you need to run your business right from your computer anytime, day or night. There's no lines. There's no traffic. There's no waiting.
I like that you can get a little label printer.
Yeah, they're really fun.
They're fun.
Then you can just print out, like, the boys are back in town and, like, put it on your desk or whatever. You can print anything you want.
Ship straight to my heart. And then you throw that on someone. That's a fun Valentine's Day gag.
Use Stamps.com to print postage wherever you do business.
Sure.
All you need is a computer and printer. They even send you a free scale, so you'll have everything you need to get started.
Oh, and the uses for that scale are endless.
And yeah, you can weigh anything. Potatoes? If you need a package pickup, you can easily schedule it through your Stamps.com dashboard. So set your business up for success when you get started with a Stamps.com today. Sign up with promo code CHECK for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a free digital scale. There's no long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code CHECK.
The thing that just surprises me is this movie feels like, when you're talking about trying to distill what is the sensibility of this thing, what is it aiming to be, I just think this film feels of a piece with like a handful of 90s movies that were breakout music video directors and or commercial directors where people would go like, this guy's shit is so fucking kinetic and exciting. Imagine if you let them do a whole movie like this. And then you watch it and the movie feels like a collection of music videos or commercials where like every scene has 87 ideas, narratively, comedically, visually, musically. And
you
it's
can only imagine how
much.
Annoying it was on set. Where the guy's like, all right, everyone stand still. I have to do this next setup, like, or whatever.
Everything has to be like a special shot. And then you watch this and you're like, he has told a story successfully 2 times before this. He's done it. This feels like someone who has no substance in the tank. When this is a guy who came out of theater.
There's a little bit of like a it's not like little kid logic where it's like, and then a dragon comes out, but the dragon's wearing pants. Like it's not that it's not that disjointed, but it is kind of like the teenage version of that. It is kind of the teenage version of that. Like, and then I've always loved so-and-so. Like, let's throw some of that in. Like, it's going to be so much fun. It'll make sense. Don't worry about it.
It does feel like a movie I would have written as a teenager. It certainly feels like a movie that if I saw it, I was 11 when it came out, so I was too young to see it. But if I saw it at the age of 12 or 13, I might have been like, no, man, that movie is really interesting. Like, heaven is an office. And, like I would be, right? And then, but at the same time, if I was, like, say, I'm a disaffected 25-year-old Gen Xer when it comes out and I see it, I would have been like, I'm out. I can't watch sports. This is like, this is it. My whole culture is ruined. Like, and now it just kind of feels like this sort of cute little artifact. It's, kind of a failure. There's a little bit of stuff in it, but the problem with the dossier, Griff, and we're going to is that I think Danny Boyle is very quick to criticize himself. So I'm not sure if there's more blame to pass around because he's mostly putting the blame on himself for what doesn't work about this movie. But it just kind of feels like no one was like, "Hey, buddy, this doesn't make sense." Like, hey, can we not? We got to talk about this more. It feels like they were kind of being given a little bit of rope. And, whatever. It doesn't hang together at all.
I'm interested to hear you talk more about what he said about it because I stumbled on his sort of defense of it, which was like very much a defense that seemed to be taken out of the context of him like apologizing for it. And then the quote I read kind of like, but if it does have a redeeming quality, it's which he was like, isn't this kind of the way falling in love feels, though? Kind of like, in a way, guys, who's with me? That's kind of how that energy?
It has never felt that way to me. And I think if falling in love felt like this, I would be happy being single forever.
Correct. That is the correct answer.
I don't think it captures anything there, but I do agree with you, David. This is the kind of film where if I had seen it when I was 12, I would have defended it on the grounds of it being different.
It's different. It's got stuff going on.
It's doing stuff.
Griff, it's a little less ordinary.
This movie is so much less ordinary.
Nope.
No. Okay. All right. So, obviously, the other thing to say, Shallow Grave comes out in theaters in the UK in 1995. Trainspotting came out in 1996. This movie comes out in 1997. So this guy is working all the time.
Wasting
no time.
And
it's a real rocket fuel career thing. And that's why it feels even crazier that once Trainspotting is out, Hollywood is like, Alien 4, sign on the dotted line. You're doing this, right? We have a Joss Whedon script. He, as Boyle said, he met Sigourney Weaver, and she's like, all right, so everything is happening. And the way he puts it is
Excuse me, that's not what he said. He said he met Sigourney Weaver, which was absolutely a buzz. Such
Absolutely
a good Danny
buzz.
Boyle quote.
It really is. You're right.
Adorable.
He's a sweetie pie.
Yeah.
What a buzz, I'm sure he said to her. And she was
what a buzz.
But yes, the way he puts it is he realized the franchise was transitioning between old school physical stuff and effects and stuff to CG, and he's in retrospect he's like, maybe I could have been the guy who's like, let's not do CG, let's try and keep this as practical as possible. But certainly he couldn't throw his weight around back then. And also, I think back then he didn't know how to really direct either CG or complicated puppetry, visual effects stuff. So he's kind of like, what am I doing here? Right?
But it is funny that all of his quotes about why he left the movie just broke down to the technical stuff. He was like, I don't do effects, and I don't know how to do the puppets, and I don't know how to do the CGI, and they want the CGI. I probably would want the puppets. I wouldn't know how to do that either. There's nothing he talks about on any story level. He's basically like, I pulled myself out because I didn't think I was experienced enough in that area.
Which, Jeunet obviously had been working with really interesting practical effects from the start of it. Like, Jeunet does make more sense on that level. It's just that everyone who made Alien Resurrection is like, that guy didn't speak English, so I didn't know what he was telling me. So that's the problem.
I'm great with it. I'm glad that's what was happening, because somehow I enjoy the results. I
don't hate that movie. I do not hate that movie, but
I don't either. And it definitely does feel like a movie where the people who made it were not able to speak to each other. That is the best way to explain.
I'm great with it. You should feel as weirdly alienated, pun intended, as just the stark insanity of that movie demanded. And
successful
they totally
in that
pulled it
regard.
off.
Yeah.
But this, I'm like, with John Hodge, and this is a sincere question. Like, do you think it made sense to him, the idea of like Gabriel and heaven, and you know what I mean? Because I'm like wondering if the original screenplay had more or something, if there was or really was just like, I don't know, like I had a weird dream that heaven, I had just watched Stairway to Heaven or whatever, and like I had a dream that this, and then but it was this.
Well,
and that.
They definitely like that movie.
Yeah,
Stairway to Heaven is influenced there. There's no doubt, which makes sense. Obviously, also known as a matter of life and death. But the weirdest thing is that stuff was not originally in the script at all.
What?
Which is when you learn
that's the
you're
framing
like,
device they felt would save this.
It just feels like a weird thing to sprinkle in, but it basically seems like that's what they did.
But like, anything. So Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo weren't there. Like
they were
weirdly
there.
showing
John Hodge
up.
takes out his typewriter. Page 1. Where does this film come from?
So here's the thing. Okay, so while Danny Boyle is weighing, should I do Alien 4? John Hodge is like, here, I've written a new script. It's called A Life Less Ordinary. Danny reads it and is like, well, this is more my cup of tea. This is more this is Andrew and John, who I've worked with. So I'm more comfortable with that. And he just hops right over to that. And that's fine, right? John Hodge had been working on this script apparently since he started writing, and so he sort of picks it back up after TRAINSPOTTIng.
The thing he was noodling with pre-TRAINSPOTTIng, and then he comes back around to. Yeah.
Yes. Huh. Initially, the script was set in Scotland, right? Much like his other scripts, okay?
I like what I'm hearing.
It was more straightforward, the way Boyle puts it. It was more graphically violent, and the Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo characters were not angels, but human bounty hunters or detectives. And I'm going to complete this Boyle quote here. Moving the location to America, toning down the violence, and introducing the angels made it into a completely different film. We made changes to it that were, in retrospect, a mistake.
Because otherwise people might be saying it was a Scottish Fargo. Like, people might be saying that today. They might be like, it was a Scottish true romance or a Scottish.
Exactly. It was a Coen Brothers movie. It was, like him writing like a Scottish set, inept criminal romance thing. It sounds like it was kind of riffing on,
he is,
Raising Arizona and all that stuff,
He's right that did make it into an entirely different film.
Yes.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen that movie because we're so, you know what I mean? Like, we don't mind if somebody from a different country sort of interprets their, spits back out their fandom of something and like it succeeds. We like that. We're not going to say it's too derivative. We're going to say, it's a fresh take on a certain vibe. I would like to see that movie.
It's funny. My mind's eye perception of this movie, not having seen it, but probably, half remembering trailers and TV ads from when it came out. I always got this confused with Excess Baggage, which is the same year and feel incredibly similar to me, where it's like sort of popping stars on the cusp.
I feel like I can't even think
It's also a kidnapping movie, right?
It's Benicio del Toro and Alicia Silverstone. Benicio is the dirtbag. Alicia is the bratty, rich teenager.
Okay.
Right, and I think that one is she pretends to kidnap herself, and then he actually kidnaps her for real.
Okay.
Something like that. Yes, exactly.
Everybody was super into kidnapping.
Yes.
1997, kidnapping. Got to get a couple sexy stars tangled up in a kidnap.
Yeah, and they're both like them with cars and hip soundtracks and shit. And I absolutely was certain that Delroy Lindo and Holly Hunter were just bounty hunters in this movie.
Right, but no. Instead, they took a script that existed, and I guess Boyle does not explain who came up with this, but it's clearly someone was like, "What if they're angels sent on a mission from God?" I guess, right? Like, because I don't know how else you would describe it. Like, you have to point at those characters.
The stakes are their boss Gabriel is so angry about the amount of divorces that they need to make these two random people fall in love, or else they are cursed to be mortal and sent back to Earth.
But don't worry, there's a literal deus ex machina at the end. Like, maybe that's where it started. Ooh, what if that's what happened, where they're like, we don't love the ending to this. We really need like a deus ex machina. And they're like, wait, what if we just did literally that? And God made it so that a bullet could go through. You would like, how was it supposed to end otherwise? In this case,
ending feels kind of like
there's a hole of light. There's a hole of light
constructed, and Danny Boyle's like, but if God is involved, maybe then the ending feels less ridiculous.
Right? Maybe that's it. Right? Maybe they're just like, well, we can't really square this third act unless literal celestial bodies are making it happen.
Yeah.
But the other thing, of course, is they decide to move the action from to Scotland to America. Danny Boyle says that's the home of road movies. We probably should have stuck with Scotland and France. Apparently, there was some stuff in France, but we'd done 2 films set in Scotland. We wanted to branch out. And apparently, the original script had lots of severed heads and crazy violence.
7 heads in a duffel bag?
Maybe, yeah. And then they found out there were 8 coming soon.
Embarrassing.
Exactly.
The way Boyle puts it, I am very proud of Ewan and Cameron's work in A Lifeless Ordinary, but it's bedeviled by the Coen brothers. The shadow they cast is so colossal. They mix violence and comedy in a way that's really unpalatable, but they engineer it so it's effective. And I think Boyle is basically just like, I couldn't pull it off. Like,
I tried and failed.
Yeah, like he's not. He never. This tone does not leave him. Obviously, he makes very comic and zippy movies, but it does kind of feel like he's like, yeah, I took the swing at their thing and I realized that's their thing and I can't do it. I don't know. Right?
I don't know if I can commend Cameron Diaz for performance. I'm not sure I can get there, but
can't either.
We're gonna have a Cameron Diaz conversation.
We're gonna have a whole Cameron talk. Yeah. There's a big Cameron sidebar
Okay.
coming up. But I also don't think that like that's the problem.
Agreed.
With this movie is like, well, I tried for the Coen Brothers and I didn't get the tone right, and it's like you were adding 8 other tones to the mix.
Yes.
And you were overcomplicating the script to the high heavens.
Including to the high heavens, like including high heavens.
Literally going to the
literally.
high heavens. The highest of heavens.
This is from, okay, here's another thing. Apparently, Danny Boyle had basically never been to America. His only concept of the US was from movies. So he went on a 10-day solitary drive across the country, stopping in small towns to chat with locals. He would hang out.
I want to see this movie.
Absolutely.
I kind of would like to see it. Baby Danny Boyle just popping into local stores and being like, hello, you're all Americans then. Apparently, they would hang out at a Salt Lake City pub called Spanky's while they were shooting this movie because they shot this movie in Utah. And Danny and Ewan would shoot pool, around or just with the locals and all that. So they had a lot of fun. They went on a nice vacation to Utah. It's kind of the thing. And then, of course, the other influences you might spot in this movie, Danny Boyle's 2 big other influences. Stairway to Heaven, a.k.a. A Matter of Life and Death is one, and It Happened One Night is the other. Another famous road trip movie, obviously, with bang, bang, quick fire dialogue.
And that's where some of the madcap comes from,
Sure.
All that stuff. But, I never know what to make of it when I talk to a filmmaker and they're like, yeah, I was thinking of, 2 of the most totemic movies ever made. If you say Matter of Life and Death and It Happened One Night, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. We'd all love to make those. Yeah. Great. Okay. What happens if, it's the same thing. Like, I'm going for a Blade Runner vibe with this. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Let me know how that works out for you. I get, you want to acknowledge your influences or whatever, but it's tough to compare yourself to these things.
Especially if it's the same one movie that everyone tries and fails to make. Like, It Happens One Night retains its status because it is so deceptively hard to pull off.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But didn't I also read that Stairway to Heaven was directed by McDonald's grandfather? So there's an actual
correct
familial connection from that movie to this movie.
Yes, Andrew McDonald is the grandson of Americ Pressburger. Danny Boyle says he never brings that up, so we do it for him.
Nepo grandbaby,
which is funny. One last lovely quote from Andrew McDonald is, one lesson I learned from my grandfather and Michael Powell's work is that they had this core group of people they worked with over and over. And he's saying this in the context of Ewan and Danny can be like De Niro and Scorsese or Mastroianni and Fellini.
That's so sad.
And it's it is sad because they do lose that connection. Obviously, they eventually made T2 together, but it's sad to think of the alternate universe where they just keep making movies together because God bless Ewan McGregor. He's had a great career. But he made a lot of shit, in the 2000s as well. It might have been good to have Danny Boyle to go to every 3 years, right? And do something new. I don't know.
It definitely makes sense, or makes more sense now why Ewan took getting bounced from the beach so hard.
Yeah.
Because it was not this is one movie where they went with the bigger stars. I thought we were in this together.
Right.
For the long
we were all
run.
doing this together. Right.
Yeah.
They were young. They're making these movies so quickly. Like I said, it's hard. Anyway, so A Life Less Ordinary is opens in heaven. And the
doesn't close in heaven. Don't worry. It closes in claymation.
That's true. And not 5 seconds of it, a good couple of minutes. In heaven, angels are in charge of making sure that mortals find love. Now, look, I know
I
about
hear a symphony
Cupid.
by Diana Ross and the Supremes plays
Good song.
as we go through, right, as we said, Angel Precinct, basically.
You know, I
no
know
title
Cupid...
card, by the way. It's just white.
No.
And so we're able to kind of surmise it's heaven.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but you're saying it's not like heaven, comma, 1995.
Right.
You know, angels, I don't think of angels as being in charge of people falling in love, are they?
No.
That's not a thing.
Then once again, we have a figure. His name is Cupid.
Yeah.
There is a mythology
He's
built
a little
around
fat
this.
Greek baby. That's who Cupid is.
Right.
And he's there. But like angels are supposed to like protect you, maybe, right? It's kind of like you know, you're wobbling on a bridge.
It's the
maybe
guardian
an angel
angel
is.
thing.
Yeah,
Also,
exactly.
like, even if in this reality we're accepting that angels get people together, like, this is happening in a police precinct. Like, there's nothing about what they are tasked with doing that fits or makes any kind of sense in any kind of context with what we see as we're tracking them coming through. What we see looks like a police department where everything's white. There truly is like a scantily clad, lovely young woman with like pearls and lace that's white, you know, and you're like, to understand, you're meant to understand, like, okay, she's maybe in the sex work trade. So something going on there. Like, you know, there's people, I feel like there's people being booked for stuff. So it's not like, there's not, that doesn't then allow you to go, oh, I get it. Angels are responsible for people falling in love. Like, that doesn't help us.
Absolutely.
They have nothing to do with one another.
It doesn't make any goddamn sense, and they don't help. Dan Hedaya yelling is not going to be enough to get me over the line on this concept.
No.
But also, Gabriel is like the don't shoot the messenger angel, right? Like, he's sort of the go-between between God and humans. But in this, no, he's like the middle manager between God and other angels.
Yes.
Are we in the romance wing of heaven? Is every office here dealing with some different petty bureaucratic?
This is starting to make sense. I like where you're going with this.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Though? Like, is this just the love division, or is this every room would be a different thing to take care of?
Again, you're asking more questions than I think people asked while making this movie. I just think there's more in this movie. There's more just a thing of like, what do you mean? They're magic. What do you want from me?
Right.
They're magic.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Griff, Michael, the Nora Ephron film, that's around the same time as this. And that kind of has the same idea, right? He needs to make people fall in love, right?
Yeah, there's
Sort
a Boyle
of.
quote here where he said they were concerned that Michael and the preacher's wife were coming out so close together.
A lot of
that there was
angel
this
movies.
90s wave of angel movies.
Right.
And then he was like, our movie has sex and guns, though. I think we'll be fine.
You're fine. You're fine.
Yes. I mean, that definitely is not the thing they had to worry about. That's for sure.
At the time of filming, both Michael and Preacher's Wife were causes for concern, but our film is less pleasant than either of those. Plus, we have guns, sex, and swearing. It's a McDonald quote. He is right that this film is less pleasant than those.
Yeah, sure. Do you think Touched by an Angel also was because that was a big thing, right? People were kind of obsessed with that.
It was down to Roma Downey and Dan Hedaya for that part. They were testing against each other.
They should have been. No, the worry with Michael was, are people going to think back and conflate that and Phenomenon and think that the angel Michael learned Portuguese in like a day? Because that's what happened to me. Yeah.
We covered Michael on the show, and anytime I bring it up to people, they go, oh, the one where John Travolta becomes smart and dies of being too smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too dang smart.
And his
couple
brain
of
gets too big.
adorable magic guys all in one. John Travolta. Yeah. Okay, so I would not even, I mean, I really wouldn't have even worried about that. Like that's the least of your worries. The least of your worries is that you're afraid that this movie is going to be compared to those other two angel movies.
Yes.
Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it.
But then I want just like, I'm actually pulling up my Apple TV window to scrub through this movie to make sure I remember the order in which things are established. We go from heaven to Cameron Diaz in the pool, wanting to do her William Tell practice, right?
Because the whole idea is that he's like, you've got to get some people to fall in love or else you're in trouble. And then he opens a file and he's clearly kind of like, oh boy, only the worst possible file I could be giving you. Like,
because from up top, somebody did say at some point, like, how much free will, how much control is there? Like, there is somebody above him who's like,
that's why it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
How much magic are they allowed to use?
Are they causing the kidnapping? What control do Delroy Lindo? Like, what are they in charge of?
Thank you.
What have they manifested
That is
here?
my number one biggest question. Is like, this trajectory is set and all they're doing is nudging a little bit, because the construction of, she accidentally shoots a guy, her father is yelling at her, he's angry because he's being replaced by a robot, so he storms into the office at the same time. Like, if you told me, well, this is so manufactured, Angels, of course, forced this into happening, this non-meet cute, I would believe it. But it almost feels like they're like, okay, good start. Thank God that happened of its own will.
This was all going to for sure happen. Yeah, yeah. How do we nudge it along? We're going to evict. This is where these guys need help. Right. We got to get him evicted from his apartment. That is a must for this romance to work out. And it may not happen if we don't come in and evict him and take all of his stuff, so that he then goes crazy.
Fate was always going to bring these two together, but they were going to hate each other. So now they have to make them like each other while they're together.
I am more pro, like, I like the Michael thing of, like, Andy McDowell, William Hurt are both just kind of like cynics, right? They don't believe in love anymore.
Right.
And so if this movie is starting with Ewan being like, nah, I don't believe any of that crap, like, you know, I'm never going to fall in love. And I'm like, okay, I understand the challenge here. Instead, it's like Ewan McGregor is quite romantic. He's writing fucking novels or whatever.
The most
right?
romantic, yes.
But he's just, I guess, an impulsive fool. And then Cameron Diaz is a spoiled psychopath. Like, is that supposed to be the challenge? That they're just kind of awful? Like, they're two awful people?
Yeah.
Let's set up very quickly, okay? So Stanley Tucci is one of her many suitors who is a dentist who gave her great smile.
I think he's an orthodontist, but I could be wrong.
They call him a dentist several times.
Out of respect to the industry.
Yes.
They call him a dentist, but Janet, you are correct that they say that he won't be doing orthodonty anymore. So maybe that's just like they just consider that a specialty. I don't know.
It's the only thing in the script that doesn't make sense.
That's very rude. They're not the same at all, I bet.
It's the one thing that doesn't track consistently.
It's the one thing that doesn't track.
Yeah, everything else in this movie hangs together perfectly. The Stanley Tucci thing is a disaster, and that's why it flopped to the box office. It just wasn't clear what kind of dentistry he practiced.
Cameron Diaz is practicing apple shooting off her butler's head.
After a swim, as we all do. You know your routine.
Also, techno music is playing. We're essentially starting now in a jam sketch, the British sketch show by Chris Morris. It's like so specifically that kind of era music. Like,
absolutely.
Danny Boyle, baby. That's what you signed up for. You put Danny Boyle at the helm of this baby. You're going to get that techno music in right away.
The soundtrack is getting 3 volumes at the least.
Yes.
But then, Tucci shows up, is like, how many times? Oh, sorry. Who plays the butler?
The great Ian McNeice. I just want to shout him out. I love that guy. Still with us. And Stanley Tucci is playing a cuck dentist.
How many times do I have to propose to you?
She's really rich, obviously, is the
absurdly
idea.
Rich.
And yet Ian Holm is kind of like, God, like, you know how hard it is to find you a good husband? I'm like, that's just like a random dentist. You couldn't. There's surely other suitors for the hands of a stunningly beautiful blonde millionaire. Like, would that really be tough?
And Stanley Tucci is basically like openly like, I want you as a status symbol.
Yeah. She's
like,
very pretty.
I have this house. I don't need you. I don't need anything.
Yeah.
I got a butler to shoot.
This was another moment, and again, this happened so quickly after, so for the heaven part, I was like, oh, okay, this was a book. This was a book. And then when that sort of disproved itself, then during that little piece that comes right after, I was like, oh, this is like a Jane Eyre, like a Shakespeare
modern
she's a Taming of the Shrew.
Like,
that's what this is. It's a modern retelling of an old classic. And then you're like, no, that's also not the case at all. So don't try to be linear and don't try to find a map. Don't try to map this on anything ever, but that's not an achievement. It's not an achievement.
The first 5 scenes of this movie arguably each set up a different movie.
Yes.
And feel like a different movie made by a different person, almost.
I like where you're going with this because I'm immediately feeling like Ewan McGregor is setting up a Jim Carrey movie in which, like, his girlfriend, who looks like a love child of Sandra Bullock and Mary Louise Parker, leaves him for an aerobics instructor, and, like, what is he going to do with his life? That's that movie, right? Maybe like a Jim Carrey movie.
But also,
and maybe like a nice girl like Cameron Diaz will walk into his life, and there will be some kind of enchanted mask that they have to deal with.
I don't like that kind of magic. I need something grounded, like A Life Less Ordinary. I do not want magic.
Realist, a kitchen sink drama like A Life Less Ordinary. But Cameron Diaz basically says to Tucci, if you want to hold my attention, you'll put the apple on your head and let me shoot off of you. He flinches at the last second, which throws off her aim, and thus she shoots him in the head.
In the noggin. Yeah.
Noggin.
It is his fault. Again, it is
his fault.
We're told that it hit his frontal lobe, which is good, apparently.
Thank God.
They sort of say it with the energy of like a flesh wound, and I'm like, isn't the frontal lobe in your brain? Like,
this is
might make him a better mate for her, though, because I think that's where some psychopathy can come from after the fact. If you're not born with it, you get a frontal lobe injury. He's going to care as little about human life as she does. So that might have been a match made in heaven.
His problem is definitely that he cares too much. But then we cut to Ewan McGregor. Ewan McGregor is in a basement janitor closet with 2 other janitors, and he is talking to them about the secret child of Marilyn Monroe and John F. Kennedy, who then discovers Nazi gold hidden in a secret spot only she has the map to. And with the way the film is cutting, I was like, Cameron Diaz's character that explains why she has this mansion. The setup of this movie is that she is the daughter of John F. Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe, who uncovered some conspiracy and now lives off of Nazi gold.
Yes. That is what he wants. That's, I think, an adorable bait and switch that they thought they were doing. That everyone was going to be like, what a moment when you realize that that's just an idea that Ewan McGregor's character had.
His bad novel idea that he won't stop pitching, which everyone is confused by. And then like, knock, knock, knock at the door. You're fired. We're replacing you all with robots.
With cleaning robots. Which are adorable, I want to say. Those robots are cute.
This is a movie about post-industrial replacing of blue-collar jobs. It's all there. It's in the subtext, but if you watch the movie again, you'll see that exists throughout, and that is what this movie is about.
He is ahead of the curve on this one thing. Like, for him to be expressing this concern in 1997 as a filmmaker, our job's going to be replaced by robots, feels a little still far off, right? And then you're waiting for, like, well, when they say robot, we're obviously not going to see the robot. And if we saw the robot, it'd be some proto Roomba thing. No, it's like a little, like, beep, boop, boop, R2-D2 robot.
It's kind of a
laser
Dalek thing.
Kind of.
It looks like
it's a walking trash can with brushes. Yeah. I mean,
it looks like a piece of shit.
It looks like a piece of shit. But he's both ahead of and behind the times, because that's also very 60s, right? That's like in the same way
very
that Doctor
Jetsons.
Who, like,
Rosie,
it's like I'm going to be replaced by what our idea of a robot was in 1960.
Which is just a sort of human-shaped thing with eyes that goes beep boop, but then like cleans the room. But like, Griff, what's the movie where this worked? Like, because like we're sort of and we're really concentrating on the first 10 minutes of the movie because the first 10 minutes of the movie are so busy with ideas. The heaven thing, Cameron Diaz is this insane. Ewan McGregor, robots, novels, what's the like zany movie where it's like cutting to this every 2 minutes and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is working, or whatever, like. Sure, Falling Down, very, very lively, and
this is the funny romantic version
more
of
likable characters. Yeah.
And like, here's my question: after all of that, you have this confrontation where the 2 plot lines meet. So, Cameron Diaz is getting yelled at by her dad, mean old Ian Holm, about shooting a man in the head.
And what does he do? What's his job? What does he own? Like, why is he so rich? It doesn't matter.
Do they ever say
a company? He's a
big muckety muck. Got it.
Right.
He's a rich man in a skyscraper.
We tie the threads together. He's yelling at her for shooting the dentist, and then Ewan McGregor comes in with the robot.
But he's yelling at her in this way that the movie's like, this fucking guy. And I'm like, no, he's saying, why'd you shoot someone?
Yeah.
Don't shoot people.
He's yelling, be normal.
And then Ewan comes in with the robot. You're not going to, hey, buddy, and a gun, and saying, you're not going to replace me, points a gun at him and shoots him by mistake. And we're off to this, like, zany adventure. He's going to have to take her hostage and they're going to go on a road trip. Mm-hmm. So,
in fairness, I think he takes the guard's gun.
He takes the guard's gun.
Oh,
that's
sure.
right. That's where he gets the gun.
He was just going to make an explosive statement.
He was going to throw the robot out the window
by throwing the robot through the window, and then when he gets tackled, it kicks up a notch because he gets his hands on the gun, which then he loses, which then Cameron Diaz gives back to him, and that's how the kidnapping idea is born.
And my point is, at this point, the movie actually slows down quite a lot.
Yes.
And is that better?
I mean, she still learns how to drive within 30 seconds.
Yeah,
so
you've got stuff going on. But then it's the two of them stuck together and bickering and, in a better version of this movie, falling in love in an incredibly charming way. And in the movie, I would say that's less successful, but a little bit of that.
The movie is at its most annoying when the two of them are only talking to each other. It helps when there are other characters thrown in. I'm stewing on your question of like, what is the successful version of this movie? What is the thing he is aiming for? And I think the problem is he's kind of aiming for 4 different types of movies that are similar, that he's grouping into the same pot, but actually have distinct differences. Where it's like, to a certain degree, he's doing like an Elmore Leonard, right? To a certain degree, he's doing Raising Arizona. To a certain degree, he's doing Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, these like wacky ensemble, sort of like hyper-violent crime comedies.
Yeah.
And it's like, no,
like a crime spree, but there's no spree. It doesn't stay. It's not them. It's not the two of them on the road together.
No.
Under the auspices of him having kidnapped her. Like, it doesn't consistently. It's not that. They rob a bank, right? They rob a bank. So that feels like that movie sort of starts and then doesn't exist and then maybe comes back for a second and then is gone. I agree with you.
And he's doing amped up versions of each of those movies separately and swinging between them. Yeah. Bring.
Hello. Oh. It's my friend.
You sound disappointed.
Never disappointed to hear your voice, Mr. Movie Phone.
Mr. Movie Phone.
Right, I'm sorry, you rebranded.
I have rebranded, looking to officially be brought on.
Yes, well, I leave that to them, but I can tell you that this episode is brought to you by Movie, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema.
Now, as I implied, I have not yet officially been hired by Movie. I'm sort of putting this together as a demo tape.
Well, you might be able to point out then that they have iconic directors, emerging auteurs. Each and every film is hand-selected, your own personal film festival, streaming anytime, anywhere.
Well, here's the rub. People used to call me to find out what movies were playing in theaters.
That's true. That was your job.
I do not yet officially, air quotes, work for Movie, so they have not given me ad copy. So I am calling you to have you tell me what movies are playing.
Let's see. They definitely want me to point out, for example, Decision to Leave, of course, which streams exclusively on Movie in the U.S. That's
Rated
R.
on
there. Yeah, yes. And then Lars von Trier's infamous series, The Kingdom. They've got The Kingdom Exodus, the new series of that, as well as seasons 1 and 2. So you can watch all of that crazy ghost story in a hospital stuff from Lars.
Rated wild.
Rated TVMA, I suppose. But look at some other cool. We Are Little Zombies is on Movie. That just got. If no one's, you haven't seen that, probably check that movie out. That movie is really cool.
I have not. Is it about large living people?
It's about like 4 Japanese orphans who form a band. It's great.
Cool.
It's what else have we got? We got Sean Baker's Tangerine. We've talked about that on this podcast. We've got Andrew Bujalski's Results.
Great film.
Blanky nominee.
David's favorites.
Love that movie. Maybe I'll watch that movie again. Great rom-com.
You freak.
You've got Ken Loach's Sorry We Missed You. These are just the recent additions, obviously. There's plenty of stuff in their catalog. William Oldroyd's Lady Macbeth, which launched Florence Pugh to success, and now he's got a film at Sundance this year called Eileen. So, if you want to catch up on him, yeah. So that's Mubi. Look, you can try Mubi free for 30 days at Mubi.com/check. That's MUBI.com/check for a whole month of great cinema for free.
Thank you for this. It was productive. I will keep calling you at all hours of the day.
Block number?
What's your home phone number? Give me your landline.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you my landline. You
I'll
can call
also
that.
write you letters.
It's 212-555-0199, and you can just call that, and that's my landline.
Are
Great.
you on WhatsApp?
Sure. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so they're in a car now. I mean, and their dynamic is immediately him being panicked and her being like, "You fucking idiot, you suck at kidnapping people."
Right. Her immediate go-to is, I'm going to tell someone else how bad they are at being alive.
Yeah, guess what? You're bad at not shooting people in the head.
Yeah.
You have your own problems too.
She also seems like she's about to. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know we're having Cameron Diaz section, so I keep.
No,
I
go
think
ahead.
now's
Let's
the
do
time.
it now.
I think now's the time.
Okay,
This is it. We're talking about the appeal of these two actors right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think Cameron Diaz obviously can be an incredibly appealing actor. I'm not like
Mhm.
I'm not about to debut some take that's like Cameron Diaz never been good. Like I like Cameron Diaz. in
No,
lots of
I
movies.
agree. Oh, absolutely,
But
absolutely.
certainly, I would say, Griffin, I'm sure you would agree with this.
Mhm.
She probably over the course of her career found like I tend to do better, or my movies tend to hit more when I'm playing more of a lovable, ditz,
Bubbly, yes.
right, a sort of fun, energetic character, and not
Right.
kind of a flinty, mean, sort of scary, character, which
Well,
is
it's
what she's
funny
doing here.
Also, like she's coming out of retirement now. Annie is the last movie she made, 2014, and then she's doing the movie Back in Action with Jamie Foxx now. She apparently only does Jamie Foxx movies now, but she has not been in a film in 9 years, right?
That's right.
She basically was just like, I got tired of doing it. I needed a break. I didn't really want to do it anymore. I enjoyed my life. I had kids, whatever. That last run of her movies, she did start doing the kind of flinty, angry thing where she had the run of like Bad Teacher.
Bad Teacher
playing
was
Miss
a good,
Hannigan,
a
the
good
other woman.
reinvention.
Great version. Yes,
She did
of
get to this
character.
point where she was like, I understand I'm not a 20-something anymore. I need to age into something else. And she basically started playing like the woman who is bitter that she's not a bubbly 20-something anymore.
Yes,
right?
That's well said. Yes, absolutely.
Which I think she did well. I think she did
Absolutely.
well comedically. But I think at this point in her career, she understood that she's better. It's so fascinating that this and My Best Friend's Wedding are the same year. And I feel people talk about when there's the constant conversation of like, why don't we have movie stars anymore? And so much of the answer is we don't have the pipeline that develops movie stars. People get sucked into franchises and they play one character and their identity is tied to the one character. And the ability to like intentionally build a career step by step doesn't really exist for people, at least in movies anymore. And I feel like I always will see people cite like Cameron Diaz is someone who did it right, where she has this huge, like, plucked from obscurity as a model breakout in The Mask. She
Right.
gets offered all these big studio movies. And then for like 3 years, she went to indies. She
Yes.
was like, I'm turning down all these studio films. I want to learn how to act. I want to do a bunch of small Sundance movies. I want to figure my shit out before I'm like thrust into being Julia Roberts. She has The Last Supper. She's the one. Feeling Minnesota, Head Above Water, Keys to Tulsa. Most of these movies don't exist, right? But it was
Yes.
like, here's a little quiet sort of ground for you to figure out what your thing is before you get chewed up and spit out by the
Love
system.
that.
And then
Love that.
97 is her being like, I'm back to doing studio movies. I'm doing a Danny Boyle movie. Makes a ton of sense. And I'm playing the foil in a Julia Roberts rom-com. And then that's the one where I feel people are like, she got it. She figured
Yes.
it out. She is relatable. She is fun. She's so good in this movie. She's kind of like the key to it working. The choice to make it like, no, she is likable. She's not the villain. Julia Roberts is the villain.
Yeah.
Is like kind of brilliant. And then the year after this, she does Something About Mary, and it's like, well, now it's locked. Superstar. Done. You figured it out. You're like star of a generation. Your thing is branded. But this is like the last movie she does before she figures her shit out, even though this comes out after My Best Friend's Wedding.
And it's not her fault because the character is a disaster and is a psychopath. And I think like my compliment to her is that I don't buy her in this character at all. My compliment to her is that there were several moments in the movie where I had to pause it because I was like, she is about to laugh. Yeah. Like at her most supposed to be despicable, she is trying so hard not to break. And that's my perception of it. And so it makes everything even more utterly unbelievable. Like, I'm sure she's not proud of, like, not sticking to being a character or whatever, perhaps, if she has, a sense of this performance. But for me, I was like, good for you. Like, good for you that you're like, I can't, like, you guys know I can't commit to this fully, right? Like, I'm a likable person.
Right. That's the thing. She's like fighting to suppress her natural effervescence, which is the thing everyone else at this point in time is identifying. That's her movie star superpower.
Yeah.
That's the quality. Like, I rewatched Something About Mary again recently, which I do basically once a year. And that's like a performance that should not work, a character that should not work. The entire premise of the movie is hinged on her being a construction of a dream woman written by a bunch of bro-y straight comedy good dudes.
Right.
She's not a real person. And yet somehow she makes that feel like a real person. And the key to it is at the end when they do the Build Me Up Buttercup and there's all the sort of B-roll footage and bloopers and stuff, you're like, oh, this actually just seems to be her energy at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
just
what she's
her.
like.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's what she did in Charlie's Angels. And obviously in Charlie's Angels, they do a good job balancing that out with two other actors who are doing different, things.
Yeah.
And then after that, I guess, is when she swerves into meaner mode because she does Vanilla Sky, Gangs of New York, Charlie's Angels 2, leave that aside. But In Her Shoes is probably the most, like, sort of In Her Shoes in The Holiday, which is sort of the mid-2000s for her. Like, she's playing like spiky characters in those movies, right? Like In Her Shoes, she's like a real fuck up. It's a good performance. I like that
really
movie.
Good performance.
Yeah, it's great.
And in The Holiday, it's kind of that Nancy Meyers thing where you're like, on paper, this character is supposed to be, abrasive. Because this is Nancy Meyers, she's just coming off as like she just like is breathing nitrogen instead of oxygen or whatever. She just seems addled because like in that movie, she's just like, I don't know how to have sex, and you're like,
oh,
what?
God,
You've just met Jude Law.
Someone I really like and really respect recently was like, and then my girlfriend, and I watched The Holiday and like it's surprisingly good, and I said, I don't think I've seen it, and they were like, you know what, you should see it, it's a lot better than you might think. And I put it on and I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I can't watch it. I can't get through it.
Janet,
oh no, do you like The Holiday?
We've covered it on this show. I just have a question for you before we reveal our opinions of the movie.
This is the great divide.
This is a great debate we've had on this show going on for years, and whenever this movie comes up, I pose this question to our guests.
Yeah.
Janet, which half of that movie, i.e. which romance, do you think works better?
So your choices are Cameron and Jude or Kate and Jack.
Even if you dislike the movie overall, which do you think is the more successful?
You have to remember that I couldn't get through it. So I think I might have made it through half.
Okay. Yes. So that's going to be tough for Kate and Jack, who barely interact in the first episode.
She's mostly having Eli Wallach explain script construction to her.
I remember that. I definitely remember that. I remember thinking that Jack Black was not playing a real human being. So that was also very off-putting, and I like Jack Black. But I remember thinking that it felt like he and Cameron Diaz were in the same movie in that they were not. There was nothing real happening. It felt very, both of those things felt like, I'm this character, everyone. Like, I'm on a stage and you're very far away from me and I'm being this person. But if I had to guess, I would say probably Cameron Diaz and Jude Law, but I don't know what I'm not basing that on the whole
You're
movie.
on David's
Is that correct?
side.
I'm right?
You're on David's side.
I'm on the right David's side.
Okay, crack of the bat.
Got it.
That's right.
Got it.
Cameron thing I was going to say, because you're putting Vanilla Sky into the spiky territory, but I think what's so interesting about that performance, a performance we like, is that she's basically playing the like non-comedy version of the Cameron Diaz archetype, where she's like seems kind of like amazing cool girl, hottie, and then you're like, oh, this person has like borderline personality disorder. Yes. You know, it's like the trick to that performance is that when she rolls into the party, she seems like fun, impossible movie star.
Yes.
And so Tom Cruise treats her like a prop rather than a person, and then she comes back and is like, I have feelings. You have broken me.
Yes.
But yes, it is odd. It does feel like she kept on trying to figure out how to play the spikier type, and then she kind of gets there by the mid-2000s, but the times she would try it earlier didn't work as well.
And again, this is a perfect storm of also having nothing to work with. Just nothing.
I've been watching a lot of Lubitsch movies again recently, probably just because it was that time of the year and everything.
Brag.
But watching them, I was just like, right, this is the thing that people forget when they try to make these types of movies is the dialogue is funny. Like, people constantly try to do the shop around the corner thing where they fight for the whole movie and then at the end realize they love each other. And then they're like, why do people think this is, like, mean and unpleasant? Right. And it's like, because they're not jokes. You're just writing two people yelling at each other.
Right.
Like, there's nothing funny that either of them say to each other, really.
No. The moments that I thought were, that I was like suddenly having a great time were like the one that stood out to me for sure was like just the bit of Delroy Lindo having her tied up and like not accepting. I mean, it's so goofy, but like him not accepting that she doesn't want to hit on that blackjack game is so funny. And then the poem is like very funny. And you get to the point where you're like, wait, hold on. Maybe I've been missing this movie. Has this been the movie the whole time? Like maybe this is, you know, Ben, you're gesticulating. How are you feeling?
The guy
are you agreeing?
Who barks? That's the one time I laughed.
Also another different movie.
Maybe my favorite performance in the movie, Maury Chaykin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Maury Chaykin, he's so great.
He is great. Them bringing him back it works. You know what I mean?
But what are all the examples we're talking about here? There is
nothing to do with those two characters.
There's another character entering in between the two of them, wedging in between, and then something that is circumstantially funny happens. There is no moment where their banter back and forth, which needs to be the lifeblood of this movie. You need it happened one night. Oh my God, I could hear the two of them throw zingers back and forth at each other all day thing. Because the other secret with those kinds of movies where like the burns that people are throwing at each other are funny is you believe that the characters would be charmed by each other because they are being objectively funny.
Yes.
You're like, even if they're pretending to hate each other and fighting, the things they're saying are funny. They will be amused by each other's wit. Whereas in this, it's just like two kids fighting in the back seat during a road trip.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask you a cool question? What's Timothy Olyphant doing in this? Like, what's his character?
Great question.
What happened there?
He's playing a little yokel. It's his second movie. Did you know that?
What's going on? And what? And what's
character name of Hiker?
There's the Timothy Olyphant coming, and that he comes right after Christopher Gorham, who was a guy back then. You know, Christopher Gorham, you know, he was in TV shows and stuff, who's the sweet gas station guy that Ewan yells at, and then Cameron correctly is like, why are you being mean to him? He didn't do anything to you. Both of those scenes have nothing to do with anything and inform nothing and aren't very interesting.
And even are more confusing for the character where you're like, wait, she's suddenly like down with the blue collar dude, like sticking up for him.
Sense.
Like, I haven't seen that person show up.
And this is a short movie.
Oh, it's 144? Yeah.
An hour, and like yet both of those scenes I was like, there's a lot of fat I would trim here. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and also Shallow Grave and Trainspotting are both 90 minutes in and out. The extra 14 minutes on this film are felt. They are felt. They feel padded. No, we were texting while we were watching the movie this morning, and you texted David, this thing is character actor city.
I did.
which is a great way of putting it. There was this golden age of the 90s where there was just an incredible bench of like Hollywood-approved character actors who would cycle in and out of these movies, and these films would just, every role would be filled with someone interesting and engaging, 100%. Adding a little flavor.
On top of everyone else that we've mentioned, there's also Tony Shalhoub pops up.
This is the one I want to bring up.
Yep.
Tony Shalhoub, so after he finds out he's being replaced by the robot, Ewan McGregor goes to the bar where his girlfriend works, where her boss is Tony Shalhoub, and she then tells him that she's leaving him for an aerobics instructor. Tony Shalhoub maybe says one thing in that scene, speaks for half a second, and then doesn't come back until the very end. So when I'm like 90 minutes into this movie, I'm like, did they really burn Shalhoub just handing a beer?
Yeah.
Is this movie showing off so thoroughly that it doesn't even feel the need to give Shalhoub a thing to do? Because you have Shalhoub, Gorham, Oliphant like in a row, not really serving any function. Then Shalhoub comes back at the end, but you're throwing a lot of actors.
Yeah, he's got a fun. He definitely has. I mean, that he has a great line, I guess. He has what I feel is presented as the best line of the movie. I'm not sure I feel that that's the best line of the movie, but I feel like it's handed to us by the film as like, and here, are you ready for it? This is the best moment of the movie. Is it? And then he gives up the speech and is like, she's your type. You blah, blah, blah. Like that, but he does a great job with it.
He does.
And I love the fact that it's Stanley. I will say, for as crazy as the whole Stanley Tucci character thing is, I do love that it's him, because I feel like they could have cast someone. I mean, it's such a weird choice that I like it.
Stanley Tucci.
Everybody's always happy to see the Tucci.
We all love a touch of the Tucci.
Happy to see the Tucci.
And and this is the year after Big Night. He's he's a guy, but he's probably a few years from being Stanley Tucci still, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like when is
National
Stanley
treasure.
Tucci Stanley Tucci?
Big Night was all about the excitement of them making that movie and him being a huge part of that. But like just wanting to see him in everything, I think was still a couple of years or movies away. I think you're right.
It's weirdly slowly. Yeah,
I guess it's
venerable.
Devil Wears Prada is when it goes from Stanley Tucci is a really reliable actor to, is Stanley Tucci someone we should put on American Money? Right?
Yes.
Where we're like, wait a second,
agreed.
Have we been sitting on a diamond mine?
I want to go to Italy with him. Yes.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Yes.
That's not surprising that it's that movie. I think that's right.
Because a couple of years before that is like The Terminal, and he's the mean boss, and you're like, yeah, Stanley Tucci's the mean boss. Yeah. Sure, I see it all the time. Yeah. It's fine.
He is inarguably the most interesting version of this character you could possibly put in this movie.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Exactly.
And when he comes back, you're like thrilled because you're similarly like,
it is
you
nice
burn him just to get shot in the head.
Which again, it's like, what? No, what? She's shot him in the head. I mean, I guess we've sort of established that they have the kind of relationship where if she's on the lam and her current whatever gets shot, that she would go to him. I guess we've established that.
Well, like Cameron Diaz is basically coaching Ewan McGregor through how to hold her hostage.
Yes.
And then meanwhile, Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo have gone down to Earth and have presented themselves to Ian Holm as bounty hunters.
In 1940s attire.
Saying they will find his daughter, but they're bad at this too. They say every wrong thing to Ian Holm. That's kind of funny.
It's
when
kind of
Delroy
funny.
Lindo is saying he'll prorate them if she comes back missing body parts.
Right. If you lose an ear, we'll knock off 20 grand. It's kind of funny. But guys, this movie has Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo. This movie's in 1997.
Yes.
Holly Hunter's an Oscar winner. Delroy Lindo, wonderful, wonderful character actor.
It's kind of in like a huge hot streak. This is Delroy Lindo running the 90s. Yes.
100%. They're playing, angelic.
Well, and you've got that's an actual representation of like, I want this Elmore Leonard feeling. I want Delroy Lindo. And then I want the Coen brothers. I have Holly Hunter.
Yes.
So I put them together. They're the power team that's going to always remind you of those two filmmakers. Elmore Leonard's not, but you know what I mean.
No, you're absolutely
But you want to be like, Danny, those are two different things.
That is true. That's one thing. This is what I'm saying. I'm like, how does this movie have two actors I adore Like, forget Ewan and Cameron, who I'm very fond of both of them. But this movie has Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo playing angel bounty hunters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
and she's doing a different accent. Like, you don't see her stray too far from her natural
she does
accent.
like 5 different voices in this movie.
Well, yeah.
and I say this with all due respect to them, and I love them.
Yeah.
They don't really have a lot of chemistry. They're not very funny, and their scenes are a little flat. Like, it just feels like such a waste, like of such an incredible casting coup.
Yes. And yet you're relieved every time the movie cuts to them, and you're like, finally, I can relax from this fucking hostile car ride.
And I'm sure both of those actors were like, the guy who made TRAINSPOTTIng, like, I'll play whatever role he wants. Like, you know, I'd love to work with that guy. And it just kind of feels like they don't get to do anything interesting. Like
the blank check thing, where if someone has the type of success that defies all logic, like TRAINSPOTTIng being this breakout phenomenon, then everyone goes, anything you pitch to me that sounds crazy, I must just not get it.
Yes.
Right? Everything about this movie is, you just imagine every direction he's giving to an actor, every pitch he's making to the studios. They're like, I bet TRAINSPOTTIng also sounded crazy in the room. Right. Who would want to see that movie?
Right.
Who wants the baby crawling on the ceiling?
Yeah. Don't ask too many questions.
Into a toilet.
We don't want to get our fingers in this one. You know, this is one where we know what to do, and we're just gonna back off and let you do your thing.
He's operating on a wavelength we can't even understand, so you just have to trust him. You're in his hands. You're in safe hands.
Yeah.
So we don't even really need to go through everything here, but we certainly should talk about the karaoke scene, which Danny Boyle talks about as like the film sex scene. That's what he says. Like, you know, like these kinds of movies.
That's so sad.
Going,
yeah.
Okay.
Both of you guys kind of groaned there. This is a quote from Danny Boyle that is quite charming, but it made me raise my eyebrow a little bit. He says, the dance at the karaoke is the sex scene. This is supposed to be some kind of romance. We can't do a sex scene because then you'd have to have tissues and condoms and things.
Oh, Danny.
It doesn't seem right for this particular kind of film, so we thought we'd have this dance instead, which is very old-fashioned. That's the way they used to do it in the old days, isn't it? I get what he's saying. I get that he's like, look, in a Frank Capra movie, they dance, and you get it. You know, you read everything into that.
In a Danny Boyle movie, you always need to see the rubber, is his
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, Danny, not all sex scenes need tissues. Like, there doesn't need to be a like, hey, can you
know
reach
how
over?
People shit themselves every time they have sex.
Throw the blanket on the girl's parents, you know.
Like, I just, and it does feel off. This movie was rated R, right? Or was it not? No, it has to be rated R, right?
It has to be, yes.
Right? Or, you know, like, it feels weird that this movie, that like Danny Boyle basically, it was rated R. That he keeps talking about like, you know, we cut the violence down and I didn't want anyone to fuck in it. And I'm like, why? Why not? Why don't you want some like verve here?
I mean, the quote includes him saying, with this particular kind of film. So the follow-up question from the interviewer would have been, and what particular kind of film is that?
Please define to me this type of film you're acting like exists.
Yeah.
Has any proven model. He's talked so much about what a like moral victory the condom moment in TRAINSPOTTIng was, which that moment is great, but that he was like, this was a thing that Hodge and McDonald and I talked about, that you never see the removal or the application of the condom because you don't want to show an erect penis in a movie. You can't do it with the censors. So you leave out this important part of like casual sex in these movies with 20-somethings. And he's like, we figured out the way to do it in silhouette and it's after sex. So he's flaccid. And we were so excited that we did it. And then for his takeaway from that to be, any sex scene I ever do has to involve condoms. And if I can't figure out a way to shoot it, then I guess there's no sex
This
scene.
movie has angels in it.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Danny?
Like, it's just odd how there's the karaoke dance scene, and then we just cut to the morning after, and Ewan McGregor is like, what happened? And she's like, you were great. And you're just kind of like, oh, okay. So is that that's happened now, and I guess they like each other now. Like,
and they're like celebrating that, oh my God, they slept together, things seem good. And then Cameron Diaz is like, you don't think I like you, do you?
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, I was going to
annoying.
propose marriage.
They
What
might
the
be
fuck?
falling in love otherwise. You got to remind everyone that there has to be X amount more of movie. So it can't be, we have to keep putting up the roadblocks of like, it starts to seem like we're getting somewhere, but Holly and Delroy, ring, ring, ring.
The movie essentially diffuses two central tensions 45 minutes in. It has Cameron Diaz, Ewan McGregor basically go, you're free. And she go, well, so let's do this together and we'll both make money. And so you're like, okay, so now there's not a hostage situation anymore. They are willing partners.
She's coaching him on how to be a scarier negotiator. She's writing ransom notes in her own blood.
Yes.
Which is a fairly intense thing for her to be doing.
Right.
And they're doing these phone calls, right? You know, she's basically like, come on, he asked for $500,000 and she's annoyed. She's like, I'm worth more than that. Like, you know, don't make me out like some cheap prize.
Fully collaborating to fleece her father now, though. She is not in any danger from him. And then they sleep together and she's like, but don't think anything of it. So like sexual tension diffused, tension of the hostage situation diffused. And then the people who are out there chasing them are Delroy Lindo and Holly Hunter, who want them to fall in love. So you're like, well, what happens when they catch up with the two of them? They just have a negotiation?
They got to keep trying to kill him. It has to. They constantly have to flash mortality in front of both of these characters because that's the only way for you to fall in love with someone. You have to trauma bond.
Yeah.
You can only real love comes out of a extraordinary and terrifying circumstance that will never repeat itself again, and you're just going to have to face the reality that your life is going to be ordinary unless you're a psychopath who continues to put yourself into life-threatening situations so that there's some sort of zest to your marriage.
I know.
I mean, it's not setting you up very well. It's not setting you up very well.
So wrong to want a life less ordinary, just a life a little less ordinary. No, but the scene where like Delroy Lindo forces Ewan McGregor to dig his own grave.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird scene. That's intense.
So they suck at this. So Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo are bad at this.
They keep saying to each other that like the drama will be part of the romance, right? That seems to be their modus operandi. They're like, you got to put some stakes on this or else they're just not going to be into it. But that doesn't really track.
No, and Dan Hedaya is like, I'm frustrated with your results. Everyone ends up getting divorced. It doesn't last. And I'm like, how did they ever get any two people together in the first place?
Well, we've never seen, we don't have, because that scene is meaningless and is at the beginning of the movie, we don't have anything to compare it to. We don't have any idea what they've done wrong, what their work has been like up to this point, what that even meant, why this exists at all as a device. So there's nothing, you're starting with nothing. So you don't know what they mean or why they're bad at what they're doing. Or we know that like the temperature is too cold and I guess the clothes are too scratchy or something on Earth, and that's why you want to make sure you don't. You want to go back to the place where everything is white, I guess.
Yeah, why do they want to go back there? Seems boring, but whatever. I mean, they do. They want to be immortal. I guess that's cool. What are some other things that happened? There's the whole road scenario, right?
With Holly Hunter,
where they think they've run over Holly Hunter.
Oh, she's like Terminator.
And she goes Terminator. She goes full Terminator.
She does.
Hanging on to the back of the car.
And you said she didn't have much to do, Griff. How? Shame on you.
She's got stuff to do. I mean, Holly Hunter's career is weird because I am saying like you've got Holly Hunter and you're blowing it. There are other movies from this era that she would pop up in that you would like copycat or whatever. You would similarly kind of be like, this is Holly Hunter we're working with. Like, what do we, I get that she's a specific actor or whatever, but, she doesn't actually make a lot of movies. Good for her. I'm looking at this. That's why it's so weird that she was in like Little Black Book.
Right. I mean, we ran through her piano career, how odd her career is after piano, after she wins the Oscar and what she chooses to do and doesn't do. Do you know Timothy Olyphant basically says that like, his one day working with her inspired him to keep acting, that he was feeling very broken down by the industry and was thinking about walking away from it because he found it like creatively soul crushing and stifling. And he was like watching her creative process and the choices she made on set. And she kind of took me under her wing.
On this movie.
On this movie.
She was an angel.
And I'm glad she kept Timothy Olyphant in the business because I love that man. He's a good
love it.
man.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, I love Justified, and I love, you know, even
That's the real
Scream
story.
2.
This is the real story of this movie. The real story is she was an angel. She was sent down from. Now, hear me out. God wanted this movie to get made because he needed to make sure that Timothy Olyphant had the career he has had.
Right.
So he needed to create a movie about God putting people in situations so that he would continue to stay in the business. Had to put Holly Hunter in it. She had to play an angel because she's actually in real life an angel for God, for show business, keeping Timothy Olyphant in. We have cracked this wide open.
Okay,
The movie
Can I
makes
read this
that's
total
why
sense now.
he's so inexplicable in this film. That's why when he appears, you're like, wait, why is he even here?
There was only one
understand.
reason he needed that day with Holly.
I want to read this. This answers a couple questions, but it's also just pretty good in and of itself. So he said, this is a Timothy Olyphant radio interview from 2017, KPCC 89.3 FM, Southern California.
Shout out to KPCC.
He says, I did a scene that basically got cut out of a Danny Boyle movie, A Life Less Ordinary, where I was working with Holly Hunter for the days. Those are moments. Danny Boyle, there was just a way in which he works, enthusiasm, he makes you feel like everything is wonderful. But here's the important part of the story. Watching Holly Hunter was pretty life-changing. I hadn't seen that before. We were doing a take and the camera's on her. The wind picked up and she turned her face into the wind. Some noise would happen off camera and she'd turn and look at it and then look back at me. She had this monologue and at first I keep thinking she's screwing up the shot. But then I realized, no, she's not. She's actually just completely dialed into the entire experience and everything that's happening, and she's not concerned with getting it right. She's not even trying to get it right. She's interested in the moment, whatever was happening at the moment. It felt fearless and unconscious, and I remember flagging that moment that day and thinking, well, that's where you want to go. That's where you want to get to.
Okay.
That's nice.
None of that feels reflected in the performance we see on screen.
No. And maybe, like he says, most of it just got cut out, and that's that. You know, that happens. But I'm glad he had that transcendent moment. And I'm also glad that, like almost any actor, he seems to talk very fondly about Danny Boyle. Yeah. As an on-set guy. Yeah.
He seems like a super fun person to work with. There's I don't question that even in movies like that don't succeed, for sure.
No,
it seems like he'd be a pleasure to work with.
Yes, he seems quite well regarded in that sense.
How does this movie resolve itself?
You know, what happens is eventually they get in fights and they decide to rob a bank.
Right.
Which goes well until the security guard shoots at them.
Well,
he takes a bullet
he
for
gets
her.
A flash of her getting shot in the stomach. And then, like Nicolas Cage in Next, he takes the bullet to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. And he gets operated on by Stanley Tucci.
Right.
And he like falls, he goes unconscious, wakes up to see them essentially doing some kind of sexual role play.
Tucci's doing like a cheesecake shoot with her.
We're meant to understand for sure that she's way not into it and that this, for some reason, for her is part of her manipulation.
She's like, whatever. This is what she promised Stanley Tucci, I'll, do that with you for a night if you save my friend. Right.
Yeah.
But
also,
they,
super bloody fucking like prosthetic
surgery.
leg. Yeah.
And then, well, basically they split up, but then Delroy Lindo writes a poem in Ewan's handwriting, sends it to Celine to Cameron Diaz. She is moved, comes and finds him, recites it to him, and says, I'm so charmed by this. You've won me back over. And Ewan McGregor's like, I don't write poetry. What? That's not a thing. I didn't do that.
Was the plan here?
I don't know. They didn't seem to anticipate that he would be like, I have not written poems anytime
this
recently.
Will fall apart immediately.
They did buy all the spy gear they could get their hands on.
Lot of spy gear. Yeah, the them parting ways for being such a sort of random, chaotic movie that is 4 movies, suddenly you are like in the middle of Save the Cat, in the most bland, like all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, third act. Like it feels so forced that it suddenly becomes the most pat movie you've ever seen, because it's like, what's happening here? Oh, this is where they have to hate each other now. Got it. I guess I should time my watch by that. Like
the fallout.
Oh no, yeah.
And then you're right. Like Tony Shalhoub gets the big scene, but it's the best friend in the most generic rom-com, being like, go to her. Run through the airport. Get there in time before she boards the flight.
Traffic's terrible. You're going to have to go on foot.
Hail a cab, but then after 10 minutes get frustrated, check your watch.
But give the cabbie time to also give you a gem. Let the cabbie give you a little nugget and then
just start running.
Correct.
None of this I'll just say that, like, there's probably 15, 20 minutes of the movie left when all this is happening. And I was definitely not like, I have found a hidden gem, but I was kind of like, look, this movie is kind of wacky, and I'll give it I'll give it a little credit for at least it's just weird and that it happened. And I haven't hated watching this. But then the final chunk of like the angels now resigned to their mortality decide to kidnap Cameron Diaz again.
Yes.
And take her hostage, and he has to rescue her, and then the butler shoots the angels, and like, all this stuff where they're like, I'm like, why have you crammed all of this? That's when I was really kind of like, guys, I'm sick of this. I am sick of this. I am so now a little annoyed. Right?
Yeah.
I went from being like, look, it doesn't work, but I'm charmed by the attempt the end. I was like, can you guys shut up, please?
And like Ewan McGregor gets shot in the heart, and you cut to Dan Hedaya frantically answering the phone like he's Howie Mandel on Deal or No Deal, talking to the dealer.
I had the same thought. Yes, right? Deal or No Deal energy.
You want me to? You think he's a good player?
Ewan McGregor's dream. Describing his own dream about being on a game show was enough information for Cameron Diaz to realize that what that eventually was going to mean was that she would shoot him in the heart.
Yes.
But that bullet would pass through him without harming him to then penetrate the person that's holding onto him. Like that's the takeaway from the dream. Like, oh, the dream makes sense now.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. That half-described dream that sounded annoying. You mentioned the claymation at the end, Jane. I don't know if you know this. This was because they forgot to shoot or write anything explaining where the money went. And only after they cut the movie together, they realized that scene was missing. Fox was like, do you need money for reshoots? And Danny was like, no, we'll do it in stop motion. We'll do it in claymation.
Yes.
But of course. You are right that scene is missing, and I, of course, will pull out my plasticine and make it for you right now.
Oh my God, they forgot.
They forgot.
Let me see if there's any. All right, I'm gonna just give you guys any other dossier thing. So I told you, right? Ewan McGregor had just made the movie Night Watch, kind of a forgotten '90s thriller, and he does an American accent in that, and he showed that movie to Boyle and McDonald, being like, here's my American accent if you want me to do one. And they watched it and they were like, you should just be Scottish. And he to this day is like, I don't know if they just felt it'd be better for the movie or if they didn't like my accent, but whatever, they cast him, so he didn't care. Obviously Cameron Diaz is basically getting cast off of The Mask here, as she was for all these little movies she did, like Feeling Minnesota, right, and The Last Supper and all that. She's the one. As Boyle puts it, he wanted someone mythically American. That's his take on Cameron Diaz.
She is very American, certainly.
Yeah. Holly Hunter, like, they love Joel Cohen and Ethan Cohen, those two guys, also known as the Coen brothers. So they're into that. They did consider having God appear in the film. Sean Connery, Orson Welles, Whoopi Goldberg were some names that got tossed around.
Each one of those lost roles to each other so countless times.
Yes.
Countless times. They went with Whoopi again, says Sean Connery.
I want it to be Eddie.
Yeah. Always get those three confused.
I want it to be Jumpin' Jack Flash.
I could have gotten back in the habit.
Thank you.
There we go.
I don't think you're going to get cast in the sequel, Sean. No.
Come on. Why not?
She already had played that
No
role.
one would see it coming.
She originated it, Sean.
I don't think it's a game ball, Sean. I think it's hers.
Ian Holm. Apparently on set, Ian Holm told Danny Boyle that he had been deeply in talks with Stanley Kubrick about making Napoleon for a long time. And then one day Stanley Kubrick just stopped talking to him, and that was the end of that. But that makes sense, right? Ian Holm being in Napoleon. I don't know if he was going to play Napoleon.
Did he never play Napoleon in anything?
Probably
he did that movie, The Emperor's New Clothes, where he plays Napoleon.
That's right. Yes.
Wait, what was he in?
It's called The Emperor's New Clothes.
Because I, too, feel like I've seen him with his hand in a jacket.
Absolutely, and the little hat.
He played Napoleon, guys, 3 times.
Oh,
he played him in a British TV series called Napoleon and Love. He played him in Time Bandits. And
that's what I'm thinking of. I'm definitely thinking of Time Bandits. Yes. Okay. All right.
There is. I went to the Wikipedia page for The Emperor's New Clothes, and there's a subsection, Ian Holmes Napoleon.
Right.
Listing the 2 times he's done on television, twice in film, twice in literature. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
What?
Yeah,
anyway.
he did it twice in literature, Griffin. Don't ask questions. Okay.
Dumb.
Okay, this is interesting. Okay, so the film had a small budget, $12 million, so Fox mostly left them alone because the budget was so small. Their 2 big notes were, 1, they should kiss more often. They wanted a kiss in the movie every 10 minutes.
Was David Sims the chief executive?
I was about to say. And then the other one, which they listened to, is that initially in the bank robbery scene. So in the bank robbery scene, Cameron Diaz points a gun at the teller. Ewan McGregor says, "I thought we agreed no cliches," and instead she points a gun at a teenage girl. And like is like, "Give me the money," right? That's the sort of like whatever joke. In the original script, it was a tiny girl. It was a 7-year-old girl. And Fox was like, "Look, if you absolutely want to do this, we're not going to put our foot down, but we don't think that's a good idea." And Danny Boyle was like, "You're right. You're right. She probably shouldn't do that."
We are kindly asking you not to do that.
But it still is like that moment stands out, I think, just in terms of what ages well and doesn't, even in movies that make no sense and aren't great. That move sort of stands out to me as like people today going, "I don't think we do that. Do we do that? Do we have the heroine character?" And I think it gets excused by the term black comedy, but this is not. I think this movie's been described as a black comedy. I don't think that it is at all.
No.
So it's weird because you're like, oh, there's like 4 or 5 black comedy moments, so this is going to be a black comedy. And that's like kind of how you get away with your leading lady pointing a loaded gun at a child.
Yeah.
Who is still very much a child.
That's one of the problems, is it does feel like he's trying to make a frothy comedy on top of a dark story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, the comedy in this movie is not dark at all. There are dark circumstances, and all of them are played silly.
Right. But then something like that happens, you're like, no, I just played out of my mind what could have happened in that scenario.
Right.
It's really bad.
Really bad.
It's like really bad. But
Pretty dark.
I will say, for the kiss, maybe you're going to bring this up, David. I apologize if I'm jumping on it.
No,
that authentic spit string that comes from between them right after the bank robbery. I hate that I'm interested enough in filmmaking that I can't just appreciate the reality of that. And instead, in my mind, I was imagining Danny Boyle being like, "This is it. That's the one that's going in the can. That's real, and I love it. And it's a spit string." I hate that. It pulls me out instead of putting me back in. So I have to reinsert myself into the movie. But I did. But you don't see a lot of tongue and a lot of spit strings in movie kisses these days, or in television kisses. And I appreciate that they went for it. There's your viscera. There's your condom. There's your condom.
They should use
stripped off.
to wipe off
It's
the saliva.
tissue. Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to mention, which I do think is quite cute, is that apparently, they shot this movie in Utah, and apparently Ewan McGregor really stuck out in 90s Utah with his weird hair and his funky clothes and all that. So apparently he had a bit of a hard time being, I don't know, the lonely Scottish boy in Utah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. I don't know. I think they had a good time making this movie. Like,
I think you're absolutely right.
It seems like everyone's very fond of each other and is like talking about. It's not like Danny Boyle is like, "Oh my God, you could tell from week one we were screwed, you know? It's more just kind of like, I think we kind of just like didn't have a tone that we totally figured out, and we shouldn't have turned it into angels. Oops.
This is one of those movies where the cast dinners must have been incredible.
I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's in their 20s too. They're all saucy, right?
This is in like Utah. You're just owning whatever town you're filming in, you know?
Salt Lake City, you're making a trip to the temple, kind of seeing what that's all about. Maybe you catch a Mormon Tabernacle Choir show.
Danny Boyle says he saw Notting Hill, which comes out a couple years later. But still, he says when he saw that, he was like, oh, this is a good romantic comedy.
Okay. Yes, like, and that is like, true. And there is nothing about this movie that is like that movie in any way, shape, or form.
Clearly like, I don't think I ever could have made a movie like this, but this is a romantic. Right. This is the tone I don't know how to do or don't want to do or whatever.
That does now preemptively explain why he makes Yesterday 20 years later.
Yeah.
I now get that was his sights were set on that. Yeah. Okay.
After all this, criticism, he does say, I like the film. I'm affectionate about it. It's a film nobody likes and everyone's forgotten, but there are elements about falling in love that are really good. It's very dizzy and not rational. I don't know. He seems like he's like, oh, that's my little misfit toy, right? Like that's,
yeah,
which
especially
is
if you had a great time making it. Like it's all mixed up in one thing now. It's like the making of that movie and where he was in his life and like them having fun and it being an enjoyable experience. That's hard to tease apart from something that maybe doesn't succeed at all. So, and I want him to have that. I want him for this to be a super positive, fun memory and, for him to feel like, oh, the lightheartedness, madcap adventure of being in love.
Right. And, if Leo wanted to work with him right after that, it can't have dinged him that badly.
Yeah. Or that was already in the works. I don't know how that works.
So do we want to play the box office game? Yes.
Yeah, just Janet, because we did, as you said, force you to take the poison pill on this movie. I'll just say, in booking guests for this miniseries, we our usual way of going about things is we reach out to people or people have reached out to us. If it's a first-time guest like you or someone we've had before on, we go, hey, here's the next 2 things we're doing. Here are the next 2 directors. Here are all the movies that are up for grabs. Do you have feelings about any of them?
So and
basically everyone came back to us with the exact same 3 Danny Boyle picks. It was this real thing where like everyone basically picked the same 3 movies.
What did they pick?
Everyone basically said I would do TRAINSPOTTING.
Did not feel that important to me. I mean, I gave you a lot.
You gave me. You did give a lot of options. If
you're going to tell me that a bunch of people said I want to do Millions, then I'm gonna end.
You know
call.
what? I'm sorry. No. Millions is one of the only ones we had booked early, though.
Okay,
we did book it early. Someone called.
I see. And everyone said Slumdog Millionaire and Trains. Yeah, and Trains.
No one wants to do Slumdog Millionaire, but yes. Anyway.
Oh, really? I assumed that people would just be like, I know what a Danny Boyle movie is. It's that one.
Right. Well, you wrote this email where you're saying how like important he was to you.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I don't know if we're going to find anyone who really wants to stand up for a life less ordinary, but if there's someone who has like a really strong passion for Danny Boyle at that period, that you'll be able to speak well about this to any degree. But I want to give you the platform to, if there are any other general Danny Boyle thoughts you want to say about his career, about this era, his 90s, these movies for you. I know we talked about it a little bit, but I want to give you the platform.
I feel like I said it. I feel like I said the sort of like he's
the
figuring it all out,
thing.
and he represents a whole sort of like slew of other things culturally that became important to me around the same time. I think that's true for a lot of people. But I love him. I would love to work with him. It would be amazing to work with Danny Boyle. Absolutely, 100%.
Seems like a really cool guy to work with.
Even if they could go back and reinsert me into this experience, and I had to say the only Danny Boyle movie I was in and was allowed to be in was A Life Less Ordinary, I would absolutely do it.
I want you to do a Boyle now. I mean, I don't know, man. I want Danny Boyle to do another movie more than anything. I know it hasn't even been that long, and he got hung up on Bond and then made a couple TV shows or whatever. I get that he's not like in hiding or whatever. But I'd like him to make a movie. You know?
Basically, the last thing that was like seriously announced coming from him was he's supposed to do a Methuselah action movie with Michael B. Jordan.
That is one of those projects that he's been attached to for so long. So it must be a script he loves. Because it is
Simon
hilarious,
Beaufoy, isn't it? Yeah.
But I mean, like, a lot of people have been attached to it over the years. I love, the idea of Michael B. Jordan doing it. It's basically like, what if a guy lived to be 1,000 years old, but it's like an action movie,
and he could also kick.
Yeah, he could kick. He could do a kick.
Right.
He has a kick that he does.
He could do one kick.
So make that. That's fine. I'm all for it.
No, I know that's one of those like development hell movies, but then whenever it was early 2020, they were like, this now has heat behind it again. Boyle and Jordan together, there's excitement. And then I feel like there's been no development, but you also haven't heard about him working on anything new.
When did Yesterday come out?
2019.
2019.
I put forward the theory that it's the movie that caused the pandemic. We'll get back to this at the end of our miniseries, but I have at certain points suggested that it might be, if a movie can be patient zero, it might have been Yesterday.
A lot of crowd scenes. Lot of crowd scenes.
That's true. That's true. They got to hear him do all the songs.
Yeah.
See, because
Also,
no one knows the Beatles. What?
They cut Ana de Armas out of the trailer, which is illegal. It has been decreed
ruled
by the
illegal.
Supreme Court that it was illegal.
Yeah. I think he actually served time in the can for that a little bit. I think
it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
People are talking about now. There's a new film, coming out called Plane. Right? It's about planes.
Yes. Good.
But actually, the movie is mostly set on an island. Right? The plane lands on an island.
Sure.
And then most of it is set on an island. And someone tried to tell me, like, well, that's false advertising. And I was like, do you think there are people who are like, a movie has a plane in it, I'm there? Like, where they're like, wait a second. This movie's got planes?
I feel like there was an era where that was true. I feel
like the 20s.
There was an era,
yeah. 1920s, to be clear.
No, I feel like there an era where it was like, we got snakes on a plane. We got the president on a plane.
Well,
we got Jodie Foster on a flight plan.
She had a flight plan. She had a whole plan.
She had a plan.
I think
it went awry.
I don't know.
But the element there, Janet, is that the pitch was, you won't believe what we put on this plane.
Yes.
Whereas Plane is just selling you, what if there was a plane?
That title is going to change. That title's going to change.
No, it's not.
Plane?
No,
no. It's out tomorrow or next week.
All right.
Plane.
I can just see it. Much like Ewan McGregor can see Cameron Diaz getting shot in the gut, I can see a year from now, Jack Nicholson out of retirement, back in the public eye, on stage, opening the envelope and going, the best picture goes to Plane, and then holding up the two fingers like he did after Crash. He knows how surprised everyone is by what he just said. Plane.
All right, Griffin, this movie came out October 24th, 1997. Okay. Just what you think when you watch this movie. Halloween. People are going to be in a mood for this.
Yeah.
I guess it is supernatural. So unsurprisingly, it opens number 9 with $2 million. So obviously it legs it out to 4.
Oh.
So not a great run for Life Less Ordinary. It's basically out of theaters after 2 weeks.
Okay.
But no, unsurprisingly, number 1 at the box office is a horror film.
Sure.
It's in its second week, and it's got an iconic title.
It's got an iconic title. Is it I Know What You Did Last Summer?
I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Okay.
Pretty phenomenal title.
Yeah. Pretty great
Based on
title.
a book. Based on a book. I Know What You Did Last Summer.
It is based on Lois Duncan's book. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Shout out to
I
Lois
think it's loosely based on that book, but yes.
Sure.
And of course, it was followed by I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. I think went to direct to video, right? Yeah.
I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, though, is arguably an even better title. The audacity of it.
It is audacious.
It's because it knows it's that it's sort of, making fun of itself.
Yeah, but there's
in
also
the way that you want. Yeah.
There's a nice tension to the title of the title yelling at you. This is not resolved.
Yeah.
Don't think you're in the clear. I still fucking know what you did last summer.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know.
I haven't forgotten.
And you have the immediate context that another summer has not passed. Okay, you immediately get a lot of clues.
Right. The timeline is compressed.
This might pick right back up.
Yeah.
I do. There's two things. One, I do want to say Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Do you guys remember what she's called? She's one of the great horror movie names ever. Her name is Helen Shivers. I think about it all the time.
Oh boy.
It is such a good name. I remember that movie being fun. I have not seen it in many, many years.
I have never seen it.
You've never seen I Know What You Did Last Summer?
I don't think I've ever seen it, and I think I confuse it with Final Destination.
Well, it's very different from Final Destination.
I think in my mind, there's a lot of like funny, awful, crazy things that happen.
But yeah, there's a little bit of that. It's one of those classic, it's like a beachy slasher. There's a lot of
beachy slasher,
a lot of rain and water. There's crabs.
Hook-handed fisherman, right?
Hook-handed fisherman. Right. He's no good. Anyway, so I Know What You Did Last Summer is doing great at the box office. Obviously, that starred the
Jennifer Love Hewitt,
the six named two actor. Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, 1-2 punch.
Yep.
Plus Freddie Prinze Jr. and Ryan Phillippe.
2.
Ryan Phillip. No, it's Ryan Phillip, and then E is his last. Just the initial E.
Ryan Phillip.
The period is his last.
Yes.
You've also got a young Anne Heche, Johnny Galecki. A lot of good people in that movie.
Nice.
Number 2 at the box office, Griff, is also. It's a horror. It's a legal film with horror elements.
Is it The Devil's Advocate?
How do you describe The Devil's Advocate?
Yeah, that's the only way to
describe it. So good at this. You're always so freaking good at this.
No other movie that could be describing.
Yeah.
Not really, right? There's no other movie where it's like, I'm an attorney who's the devil. Like that never happened again.
Isn't Angel Heart? Does that have? Is someone a lawyer in that? Never mind.
I don't think they're lawyers. I think he's like a
right.
PI in Angel Heart, right?
That's devil crime, you can say.
Yeah, it is devil crime.
I think it just features maybe someone in a suit. And in my mind, I was like, oh, they're a lawyer.
It is the same twist of this guy in a suit played by one of the actors from Heat is the devil.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
It might be, you're right though, it might be the only satanic courtroom thriller.
I mean, in Angel Heart, I will say it is supposed to be a twist that Robert De Niro is the devil, whereas in The Devil's Advocate, they're not really hiding it, right? Like Al Pacino basically walks in wearing horns. Yes, yeah, right.
Isn't De Niro's character name in Angel Heart Lou Cypher, though?
Correct.
Oh, hell yeah.
His name is Louis
Cypher.
What a well-hidden twist.
Yes. All right. Number 3 at the box office, Griff, is another crime movie, an adult, detective thriller.
I think I know.
Go ahead,
Do you have a
Janet.
guess?
Is it LA Confidential?
No, that is too good a movie. That movie is good. That movie, however, is in the top 10. LA Confidential is number 10.
Okay.
It's been out for 6 weeks.
But you have to say that's an adult crime movie, if there ever was one.
One of my favorite movies of the 90s. No, this is more airport, novel.
Is this Kiss the Girl?
It's Kiss the Girls.
And which one's that? Is that one of several Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman movies?
Yes.
Well, it's one of several Ashley Judd R-rated thrillers.
Okay.
And then it's one of 2 Morgan Freeman as Alex Cross.
Don't cross Alex Cross.
Don't cross Alex Cross.
Gotcha.
Who is then, of course, later played by Tyler Perry. And
Correct.
Is there someone else? No, it's just Tyler Perry.
There's a TV show now, maybe happening?
With Aldous Hodge that they're going to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But the James Patterson books, Kiss the Girls, they're all named after nursery rhymes. So Kiss the Girls, Along Came a Spider, Jack and Jill. There's a lot of he did a lot of them.
Humpty Dumpty.
Yes. Oh, totally. Yeah. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Like, James, how are you gonna? I'll figure it out. Don't worry.
I'm looking at actual titles here: Jack and Jill, Four Blind Mice, Mary, Double Cross, and Cross Country.
Well, that's the thing. He started going cross. He started doing crosses after a while. Yeah. He did like Cross My Heart. A lot of those. Yeah.
Pop Goes the Weasel. 2 of them back to back were called Roses Are Red and Violets Are Blue. Those were 2 separate titles.
Oh,
Griff, have you seen Kiss the Girls?
No, I haven't.
It's one of those things where, like, is it a good movie? Not particularly, but Morgan Freeman is so, like, above the level that movie needs, and he's so good in it. Like, because I'm so fascinated by that 90s Morgan Freeman is an A-list movie star thing. Like this guy in his 50s is now someone who opens movies, and like he's it's good stuff.
Just like a steady presence in a movies made for grown-ups.
Yeah, very satisfying.
A lot of good actors in that movie: Brian Cox, Bill Nunn, Cary Elwes. He's definitely not the murderer. No, couldn't be that. Couldn't be Cary Elwes.
He's playing the character name of John T. Innocent Man.
Nick Q. Suspicious. Number 4 at the box office is a big epic movie that is a flop. Very controversial at the time, not in America, but in another country for existing.
Condone?
No, but correct area and country
Yeah.
that's mad about it. Yes.
Yeah.
What's the other
7
Tibet movie
years
that
in
China was
Tibet.
mad about?
Oh.
Jean-Jacques Annaud's 7 Years in
Well
Tibet.
done, Janet.
That's right. Yes. Which I've never seen because it
Me
always
neither.
seemed kind of boring.
Yeah.
Well, that
seemed
was in
pretty
my
boring.
hardcore anti-Brad Pitt phase where I was like,
that
I won't
was-
watch him do anything serious.
Janet.
I don't believe him. No, I really was like,
David,
I took
so
a stand.
That is fair. That was his most
No,
boring era.
100%. Of course. That's his era where he, I think, is realizing like, I can't do
Right.
that. Like I can't do the
Saintly,
stoic,
beautiful,
yeah.
stoic.
because like
yes.
he's bad in Interview with the Vampire, Legends of the
yes.
Fall,
Uh-huh.
that Meet Joe Black, like, and Devil's
Yeah.
Own. Like he did tons of movies where it's like, don't do this, like
Yeah.
do weird shit. And Fight Club is when he's like, okay, right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was
yes.
Fight Club when he won you back over, Janet?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It is funny that he does 7 and people are like, Brad Pitt can kind of act. And then
Yeah.
he does 12 Monkeys and
Gets an
like
Oscar
he gets his
nomination.
Oscar nomination. And they were like, great, you've proven to us what a good scuzzy character actor you are with visionary directors. How about we make you some boring guy again? They just
Right.
immediately throw him back into the old shit.
Yeah.
7 Years in Tibet. So not a
7
hit,
Years in Tibet.
obviously. And it was a whole okay. Number 5 is new this week.
Okay.
It's a film we all watched in science class, Griffin. What is it?
It's a film we all watched in science
I
class.
watched in science class.
It's a good
Flubber?
movie. No. What?
Right
Why
here.
would we watch Flubber in science?
He's a professor.
Let's retcon
True.
the history of everything so that that's true.
Oh, kids are always watching Flubber in school.
David, he discovered flubber. That's a unique chemical.
Now, to be
Okay.
fair,
What
Jerry
are you
Lewis.
saying? We watched it in science class. I am mystified by this.
Flubber.
Jerry Lewis discovered Flubber years ago, didn't he?
No, it was Fred
Yes.
McMurray was the
You're right.
absent-minded
It's Fred
professor.
McMurray. It's not
Correct.
Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis was the nutty professor, right?
Yeah.
Look,
Wildly
no.
different
It's
professors.
it's a serious, very different. It's a serious science film.
It's a serious science film.
Kind of a flop on release, but quickly well regarded.
Science.
Very, very like visually.
Science, but not space. Like science.
Not
like,
space.
Like
Not
okay.
space. Grounded.
Although one of the characters really wants to go to space.
One of the characters really wants to go to space. 1997,
We
kind of
watched
a
it in
flop,
science
redeemed.
class.
It's shown in science class.
Stars.
Mystifying.
Main character is a hottie. The
Okay.
female lead also a hottie, but then the supporting character is white.
That's the
hot.
money.
Yeah, this is where he's in breakout mode. Maybe you haven't seen this film.
Flatliners.
He knows what it is. It's not Flatliners, although everyone in Flatliners is hot, so you're not wrong about that, Janet.
It's Gattaca.
It's Gattaca.
Of
It's
course.
Gattaca.
I wish I would have watched that in science
Same.
class.
Same.
It's a movie that I remember in biology class. They were like, so this movie's about genes and stuff. Let's just watch it. I'm going to put my head down on a desk. But Jude Law, so hot
Yes.
and
yes,
cool. in that
absolutely.
movie.
Yep.
Uh-huh. Great. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool architecture, if
Gattaca.
memory serves. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool aesthetically, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Cool movie. That is number 5 this week. Weird week at the box office. Mostly
Very weird.
grown-up movies, I would say, right? Like,
Yeah,
a
we
lot of
love to see it.
R-rated stuff.
Possibly until now, based on what you're saying.
And then, I'll just give you the others. Number 6 was Fairy Tale of a True Story, which is
Don't know what that
Oh,
is?
sure.
that's like a true story. Well, obviously,
That's
it's
a movie
true story.
based
They're telling you it's a
on.
true story.
There was that scam where
it's like the guy who took pictures of fairies, like in like
and
the
they published them in the
19-teens.
newspaper.
Right.
The daughters with fairies, and people thought they proved the existence of fairy. Harvey Keitel plays Harry Houdini in it.
He sure does.
It's an odd film.
And Peter O'Toole plays Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yes,
and
Mel Gibson
I've
plays
blacked
their
out
father.
during the making.
Well,
the,
you
the
didn't.
existence of this movie.
No one's heard of that movie. Only freaks like us know.
I saw it
movie
twice
exists.
in theaters. Yeah, it's one of those movies where it's called Fairy Tale: A True Story, but the true story is that what happened was faked, and the movie treats it as if it were real. So the title's a lie.
Confusing.
Yeah,
Okay.
much like Plane. Okay, number 7 at the box office. In and Out. Very fun.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Very of its time.
Kevin Kline moment. Sure.
Number 8, Griffin. We were just talking about him, the creator of Puppy Dog Pals.
Harland Williams.
The film is Rocket Man.
Yes.
Not Rocket Man with Elton John.
No.
The other one. I've never seen it. Have you seen Rocket Man? In which
You're asking me if I have seen Rocket Man?
Yeah.
Rocket Man, possibly my mother's favorite comedy of the last 30 years. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen Rocket Man.
pretty good tagline. Can you tell me the tagline?
There he blows. I don't know. What is it?
He's just taking up space.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Pretty good.
And the poster, of course, is his suit inflated because he can't stop farting in it. Janet, my mother, for perspective, is a very pretentious French woman, and she.
But in that way, the French people love Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis
He sees this farting
Rocket
guy.
Man.
Yep. That's where you unwind. That's where you let your hair down, is in watching movies if you're uptight in French.
Well, no, that's when she's most uptight, but she just loves Rocket Man as like, it's just very well directed.
Well, I don't know if that's true because I haven't seen it.
It's a
have
good
you
movie.
seen
I haven't
Rocket
seen it either.
Man? No.
No.
Did you know? Janet, have you heard of the animated children's show Puppy Dog Pals?
Yes.
The Rocket Man. He's the creator of that movie.
That
show. Sorry.
That's really weird.
David's
It's, like,
daughter
weird.
recently discovered it, and he decried that the show is a pox against humanity.
My daughter
Pox
is less
upon.
than 2 years old, but has found Rocket Man. I mean, Puppy Dog
Puppy Dog
Pals. She's
Pals,
not found
yeah.
Rocket Man. Found Puppy Dog Pals on the Disney Plus carousel, pointed to it and said puppy. And when I decided to try and play something else, she stomped her feet until I played it because I don't know how to deal with that. And so I put it on.
Yeah.
It's not very good, in my opinion. I'm sorry if you know anyone involved.
We
with
can't
it,
all be
obviously.
Bluey. We can't all.
Well, that's what I was trying to play was Bluey,
No.
and she was like, no, other puppies. You've also got a little film called A Life Less Ordinary. Oh yeah, we talked about that one. And then LA Confidential, Bringing Up the Rear has been out for
Bringing
a
Up the
couple
Rear.
months. But LA Confidential, look, Griff, it's been out for a couple of months. It's made $29 million, and it's going to leg it out to 64 because of the Oscar,
Yeah.
bounce afterwards.
Wild.
So that's cool. Oh, also Boogie Nights is like new and expanding in theaters. That's been out for a couple weeks and is like 100 screens.
Wow.
Ooh,
So that's kind of cool. So like you could go see Boogie Nights.
very
I mean,
cool.
there's so many good movies in theaters right now. It's crazy.
Just a variety, a real variety.
A
It
real
is.
variety. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, we're done. We gotta
what a
stop
blast.
wasting Janet's time. Come
Yeah.
on.
We got it.
This has been so much fun.
Okay, good.
Janet, you're the best. Is there anything you want to plug?
Boo! I don't know. When does this come out? I know you guys record a little bit far out, don't you?
That's a good question. This comes out on February 5th, so not that far away.
So I just want to plug,
month from
hoping you all had a great time at Sketchfest, which
Hey.
is
Mhm.
now closed as of, I guess, maybe today. Future Me is very, very tired indeed, but Future Me enjoyed seeing at least one of the gentlemen here on this podcast.
I will be there. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to
Looking
be
forward
great.
to seeing you. Yeah.
If you're a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I do a very fun podcast for Nickelodeon iHeart with Dante Bosco. It is not just a rewatch podcast, but it does include conversations about episodes and a bunch of other stuff called Braving the Elements. And we'll leave it at that.
I watched all of Avatar and Korra in lockdown in 2020. It was a great help to me.
Yeah,
and my
those
wife.
were
We loved
those
it.
shows. They came out on Netflix at a really good time for
They
where
sure did.
everyone's emotional frailty was
Yes,
in
yes.
terms of needing something like that. So
I mean,
I'm glad,
I
I'm glad that
definitely
worked out
told
that
my
way.
wife like today. She was like, what's the podcast today?" I said, I don't even need to tell you about the movie. Don't worry about it. But Korra is on it, and she was like, "Korra," and so we were very excited.
Tell her I said hi.
I will. But yes, thank you for coming on, Janet.
Oh my God, I'm absolutely going to invite myself back.
You will come back and we will make good. We will give you.
No,
we always
is
feel bad when we give people a bad movie.
It's just fun. It's just as fun talking about stinkers, especially when it's like someone you care about and whose work you love and a bunch of people you like. It's there's a lot to talk about. So
yes.
This is great.
Yes,
and this is kind of the definition of a movie that's more fun to talk about than to watch. Talking about
Absolutely.
it is really fun.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
And I hope you all liked listening to it. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media and helping to produce the show. Thank you to Alex Barron, AJ McKeon for our editing, JJ Birch for our research, Joe Bone, Pat Reynolds for our artwork, Lane Montgomery and the Great American Novel for our theme song. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features, where we do franchise commentaries. We are, of course, we just finished up the Kotze trilogy. February bonus. We haven't quite figured out at this moment. But coming up next, Men in Black, long demanded.
That's right.
We're doing the 4 Men in Black films and commentaries starting February 21st with the original Men in Black, the best movie ever made. Number one.
3 other movies.
Yep. And then 3 other movies that happened. Tune in next week for The Beach.
That's right.
We're going to the beach.
Yeah. We won't tell you where it is, though. It's a secret.
Nope, it's in a secret place.
Don't get hurt. Do not get hurt on the
Look
beach.
after
your head chopped
yourself.
off.
Yes. And as always, Dan Hedaya is a chameleon.